Welcome to the Winners and Losers Show. Hello, everybody. My name is Hank Thompson. I'm the host of the show. I'm going to be the host of the show until all the dogs are fed and loved and cared for. I'm joined today by a wonderful person. This is actually a big deal here at WANDL HQ.
I assure you it's not.
Hang on. I haven't said your name. Follow the rules.
All right.
I emailed you a pamphlet.
Did you? Okay, let's go.
I must have sent it to the wrong person. So we're doing, you're my first guest.
Okay. Good.
Welcome to Robert Yasumura.
Okay. Welcome to me.
I'd describe you as a colleague.
I think
mine?
I'd like that. I prefer to be a peer than...
Oh, a peer. I like peer better.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
peer
we're
better.
peers.
So thank you for welcoming me to your house. We're actually
pleasure.
sitting in a man's garage. You've got work tables and saws and boxes, tools all nicely organized.
Got a very nice brand new number 4 plane up there.
Is that a Stanley?
A Stanley
Nice,
Sweetheart number 4 plane.
I bought my first Stanley plane just this summer. A tiny little like $8 skinny 1-inch, the cheapest bent metal one, and I sanded it down and made the bottom really flat. The sole, is that what they call it?
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
You're talking my language. Dude.
Woodworking is my other show. Woodworking and Losers.
I think anything that has that, like, you can kid yourself that you're creating something, but the reality is that you're just kind of doing busy work. That, to me, like, sharpening a plain iron, to me, like, there's nothing more satisfying than, like, sitting there smoking a cigarette, just planing.
Yes.
And then just touch the edge, and you're like, yeah.
Feeling that smoothness.
I did something.
Do you do the pencil or marker trick on the bottom to do a squiggly line so that you can tell how flat it is?
I do if I'm flattening the base of the iron. But, the majority of it now, they come pretty flat. It's the sharpening that is a real daily...
Sharpening is something, isn't it? I bought some glass tiles to use for sandpaper and to you have flat surfaces for sharpening my little chisel. I've done some refurbishing projects lately. I forgot to show you the pictures.
Really, I remember being 10 years old and talking to an uncle of mine, and he would show me, like, look, I sharpened this this knife. Oh,
that's what I'm showing Robert my kitchen table that I just refinished. 4 coats of Armor Seal polyurethane.
Good. Mm-hmm. Water-based or oil-based?
Oil-based, obviously, I think. I don't know. I watched a bunch of tutorials and finally picked one. There's so many choices in this whole woodworking world.
I usually actually just use them in wax, like whatever they tell me. I'm really not good at finishing. Yeah. And I also use really cheap wood, so it always comes out blotchy.
Of course.
Always.
It has to.
Always. Yeah. So the one thing I've learned use a very simple water-based poly and just do a lot of coats.
What applicator do you like to use? Do you just go with a little wet finger like I do, or do you use like a torn-up T-shirt?
My preference is for a foam brush, but unfortunately with actually a water-based poly, you will get you'll get foam kind of bubbles in there.
Yes.
And the problem with water-based poly is that it dries up, it sets up quick. Yeah. So I should probably use an oil-based, but whatever.
I see guys mix with mineral spirits to dilute
mineral
it a little bit.
Spirits, I think, are illegal in California.
They must be. I was looking for them.
They do that all the time in California.
There's all these solvents in the paint section, and there's every version of mineral spirits that's not mineral spirits.
They do all kinds of...
You just can't get the pure uncut good stuff.
Yeah. No, I want to go across the border and bring some in.
Every woodworking guide tutorial thing I'm looking as I was doing this project, it's like, just get mineral spirits. I'm like, what the fuck? No. They don't have it anywhere. Home Depot, the Orchard.
And it was, and I could tell it was a California regulation because it was like, I think I went to Home Depot on January 2nd and I was like, where the fucking mineral spirits?
Push that mic a little closer to your face there. Just you don't have to lean in, just move it up. Yeah, there you go. It's perfect. A couple inches makes a big difference, as they like to say.
Nice.
Robert, we could talk woodworking. We should.
Listen.
On my other podcast, Woodworking and Losers.
That'd be terrible. Which, by the way, is redundant.
Oh, what?
No, look, I love woodworking, but I'm the first person to say, like, that is not the face of a winner. I've never looked at a woodworker and said,
what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's the James Bond I want to
be. Woodworking is the 4th oldest profession.
I agree.
Number 1 is running away from predators.
Sure.
Number 2 is prostitute for some reason, right?
Sure.
Number 3 would be family planning. Number. I didn't think that would be funny at all, honestly. I was just desperate. Number 4 is woodworking. When you had to I got a tree.
Yeah, Jesus was into woodworking.
Yeah.
It became a hobby. It started out as a profession, then he just did it on the side.
Yeah. That's Jesus. What's the woodworking?
Once you become a fisher of men.
Jesus is going to come back and he's just going to have an annoying podcast.
Yeah, about woodworking.
Yeah, called Jesus and Losers.
He's like, I just want to talk about. It's tool time with Jesus.
Go
I want to talk about some good tools I came across.
Jesus' podcast will take a big downturn when legal weed comes by, and he's like, "Oh man, I didn't think Wyoming was going to legalize weed, and fuck." Now I'm really communing with God.
By the way, what is going on with the people
myself.
who were convinced like legalizing weed was going to be the end of the world? Like, what's going on in their heads right now?
That it hasn't been the end of the world?
Yeah.
They're
that and gay marriage, and they're like, what's going on? How come the apocalypse hasn't happened?
It was supposed to happen. Is everything I was told a lie? Maybe I should rethink my beliefs and attitudes. No, that doesn't really happen.
No. And by the way, that preacher who told you 3 times the apocalypse was coming, you're continuing to give him money?
Give him money.
Good luck with that.
Yes, those guys, they love their money. You gotta travel in luxury, man. Come on. What are you gonna do? Carry your own suitcase like a fucking poor? Get out of here. Send that shit ahead of time.
I like that.
Mm-hmm.
A poor.
Exactly. All right. So we're gonna cover some news and stuff, but we just mostly just a couple old friends hanging out. You were gonna read me the riot act on doing solo. I told you that I do solo episodes, and you immediately had a heart attack.
Yeah, because you're a crazy person if you're just talking to a mic by yourself. You're a crazy person instantly.
It feels weird.
Yeah. It should.
I've done video game stuff but I'm reacting to something, seeing things. This is just staring at Evernote and like a couple browser windows and a folder full of audio files of Brett Kavanaugh saying I like beer, and it's just me yammering away. And you have to. I don't know if I'm good at it at all. I assume I'm not.
It doesn't matter if you're good at it at all. The fact that format is what you're rolling with makes you a crazy person. I mean, that's how InfoWars started. And I'm old enough to remember guys who I'm
already on the slippery slope to being Alex Jones.
Absolutely. Like the moment that you are airing the dumb shit that goes on in your head for 20 minutes or above at a clip.
Above. Way above.
No. You're in bonkers territory.
I know. Tell me about it.
And by the way, if you're going to do that, do it old school. Start a pirate radio station out of your garage. Yes. That's the way you should do it.
Well, I do. I go onto a boat. It's a pirate boat, and wasn't that a movie about pirate radio where they
there was
on a boat?
Pirate radio station in England because England had terrible radio in the 60s and 70s. So they started a pirate.
They put a transmitter on a boat and
somebody had an old boat.
Man, you really had to be motivated to be a podcaster back in the day, huh?
Yeah, the fact that everybody has a podcast now is because you have to. You're required because it's too easy now not
too easy.
to.
Yeah, the barriers to entry are very, very low.
Which really,
even some jagoff like me can do it.
I think that you should get a tax fee if you don't have a podcast.
Right.
You should have to pay. It
should be like how voting is in Australia, compulsory. It almost feels like that. I think in our LA bubble, we tend to, both online and offline, we tend to think these things are more common than generally. Like I'm mostly friends with and follow comedians. I follow a lot of news and politics people too.
That is true. We know a lot.
Like everybody has a podcast. So go to Topeka to the local O-ring convention. I doubt there's that many podcasts just randomly being talked about and thrown around because this is an industry of people who are trying to get attention for their personalities.
I got to tell you though, I think that they're still
for Topeka. Great coffee, Robert. Great coffee.
For Topeka, there's probably a surprising number of podcasts
about O-rings.
Yeah. Listen,
Or-
we can talk about O-rings if you.
Oh man, don't get me started. I used to fucking do aquariums. You think I don't know about O-rings? Get the hell out of here. There's small ones and there's big ones, and the trick is to just slather it with silicone and let it dry.
Silicone grease.
Mm-hmm.
I actually the big thing because I'm okay. Here's
Oh,
another.
here we go. Robert with one of his classic O-ring rants. Come on, let's have it.
The O-rings from Japan.
The ancient art of folding O-rings.
So here's another really fucking old nerdy thing you can get into is
All right.
flashlights.
You know, can I give some context to this comment? As we were talking about 5 minutes ago, Robert pulled out a flashlight out of his back pocket.
300 lumen.
300 lumen, set it on the table silently because he's a pro. I can't say pro because he's a pro podcast guy.
Even though I'm tapping as I tap my cigarette on
Yes, right.
By the way, I get to smoke during a podcast. This is the best.
Does it feel good?
Oh, it's
Can I
the
come over
best.
tomorrow?
Oh yeah.
All
You
right.
can- honestly,
Let's do it.
if you let me smoke, you can get me to do virtually fucking
Will you
anything.
be my podcast partner forever if I just come over?
Oh yeah, anytime. If
Because
if you could blow a guy with a cigarette in your mouth, I would seriously consider that as a career move.
wait, so
I would prostitute
what's
myself
holding-
if
okay.
I could smoke while blowing a guy.
yeah,
But it's just that you can't do
You
both,
can't do
at,
both
the
at the
same
same
time.
time, yeah.
If you could,
right.
I would like look into that as a career.
Yeah. Is
I
there a
would-
market for that? A lot of demand?
For blowing guys?
I'm looking for a blowjob. Yeah, no, there's obviously a market for that. But for having a simultaneous cigarette in your mouth. I'm saying, could you get a customer? I'd rather someone were blowing
you mean
me
it would-
that they didn't have a flaming stick inside their mouth.
Yeah, that's the point.
The only
That's
flaming
point
stick
of me.
inside their mouth I want is...
Your flaming stick.
Yeah, see? Pre-Me Too comedy here for everybody.
So anyway, yeah, I'm
Flashlights.
shockingly into flashlights.
I am too.
Where
I have a tactical flashlight next to my bed in case I get invaded. What do you? Is that the reflective thing on the front? The magnifying?
This is
lens?
actually it doesn't have a focusing ring, so it's
Oh my God,
it is the hot spot is
Yeah.
what it is. But it's 300 lumens and it's only $24.
Beautiful.
Which
LED,
and it's a
obviously.
nice mag light size.
Yeah.
And I usually
It's a good Red Bull, tall Red Bull can. but
and
thinner.
I have like $50 flashlights. Like I'm into it.
I get it.
And like
get
I'm
it.
like, oh, it's and
Yeah.
it's the dumbest hobby that I can think of.
Does it rise to hobby status for you? Because hobby implies
There are
that
guys-
you have a subscription to something.
If you think this podcast is pointless, there are YouTube channels that
We're
are just
changing the
guys
world, Robert.
talking about their fucking flashlights. And
I believe it.
by the way, they have more subscribers
Of course.
than people who are actually talking about stuff that's important.
Well, it's like body bags. There's always going to be a demand.
It's
as long
true.
as Earth still rotates, there's going to
Speaking
be
of which,
half the population of the world will
check out
always be in the
iTunes
dark.
for our body bag podcast.
Body bags and losers. Yeah.
That's a
Good
quality body bag.
one. Boy, these Chinese imports, man, they're just
They're
not
not-
the same
they're not
as
as
those
good.
Guatemalan imports. That we
But I
used to
gotta
get.
say, Chinese manufacturing's come a long way, and Indonesia is where the really crappy body bags
That's
are
right.
coming from these
Some
days.
great artisanal stuff coming out of India these days, though, for sure, man. It's actually the zippers; they never fail. They don't catch on the hair or anything. Yeah. So no, I get the obsession with flashlights. I have a similar thing. I don't indulge it much because it's a rabbit hole you can go down, although well illuminated rabbit hole because they're dark, and
It's expensive now,
They're
though.
great, and LEDs have really changed the flashlight game.
And they
used to
changed
have
the-
those old mag lights that were fucking
Right, that was it.
The only benefit to owning one of those big old long mag lights is it's a weapon.
Yeah.
I have
but
one
they're,
of them.
They're not.
Yeah, it's a club.
Actually, it was kind of amazing how badly Maglite fell behind. As
You
a
mean
company.
an LED adoption?
Once the LEDs came in, it was really shocking how quickly Maglite never caught up again. So, like, I think their development process must be really slow because
Yeah.
LED technology is jumping at like 9-month cycles.
It's one of my favorite things about people that we
Which-
invented LEDs.
Yeah.
I feel like they're just so cool.
LEDs are like the
Yeah.
one thing where you're like, oh, we might survive. We might make it.
Yeah,
Technology
like, there's
might.
some awesome light thing that illuminates the dark, which is one of the humanity's core missions.
Yeah, it's like that and heating yourself.
and heating up and keeping the wind off your face, generally. But the LEDs are amazing.
LEDs are
efficiency.
like make me think like, oh, maybe we can re-terraform the planet.
Have you played with the strips, like the long?
No, I
on
haven't.
roll? So I did a little bit. I have a solar keyboard, and instead of putting it in the window like I was doing, because it's wireless, I installed a strip of LEDs under my desk because I have a tray for my keyboard. It pulls
Okay.
out. So my keyboard is always being recharged by this LED light. It's customizable. It's got the full RGB.
I think
controller.
you've ruined the idea of like, well, I'm recharging using the sun. Isn't that the point of solar?
Yeah.
So
what?
you're actually using energy to create energy in probably a very efficient
But
way.
you wouldn't judge me if it was wired. That's the same thing as pulling energy into a device. I'm just pulling energy through photons coming out of an LED strip.
Right, but
I'm
it's
not
still-
using an incandescent bulb to recharge my.
It's still inefficient.
Yeah, it's less efficient than using the sun. That's
Okay.
for sure. But I'm averse to the sun. It hurts me. Like all white people, we get wounded when we're in the sun.
You are whiter
This-
than most people,
Dude, I had a job for a little while. I was getting outdoors. I had
and
4 weeks of working. I was outside for part of the day. It was great. Yeah. No,
as
yeah,
opposed to
I
in your
definitely,
cave.
I definitely have developed a very bad case of video editor body.
Yeah.
It is not good.
If I just saw you on the street, I might think that you either are a video editor or somebody who
Yeah.
covets a ring in a cave all day long.
Yeah. I look like Gollum with diabetes. Like if Gollum had if Gollum had a Ralph's nearby with a fully stocked bakery department, that's me.
If Gollum was about to lose a toe,
Gollum struggles to get health care.
Gollum's like, my
have the paperwork.
my
Did I
my
take him German?
I've got nerve damage in my extremities
Yeah.
from
Yeah. Gollum. So, all right. Wow. Wow.
what's going on in the world.
How do we do this? Let's talk politics. We're already almost 20 minutes into this. I want people to get what they came for, which is the most up-to-date insights and analysis. Hot takes, you got them.
Although
Mostly lukewarm and cold takes. to be
we're
honest.
coming, unfortunately, on the heels of the breaking point with the Trump administration, where people are just like, I can't talk about this anymore. I just can't talk about this anymore
okay.
and feel sane.
How do you, all right. We don't hang out. I wish we did. But let's get to that. Maybe we'll just rewind a little bit.
To the coping mechanisms
to coping
around
with
living in
this ordeal. I'm definitely struggling. I know I'm not the only person. I see people with resources and support systems also struggling, and I'm thinking, man, that must be nice. I wish I could struggle with some of those. But I don't know what other people's experiences are like. What has it been like for you, starting with like as the election was coming up to him winning to these last 2 years?
I was sort of bland on the election. I was like any other Democrat, where I was like, Hillary's fine. I will, we can muddle through Hillary. She's fine.
Okay.
And I did feel like Bernie had done a good job of making it clear like there is a market for wholesale socialist democracy,
Right.
and pulling the Democratic Party a little bit to the left, and that was the only thing I was concerned about, was once Hillary got in, would she continue to be pulled to the left appropriately?
Not enough, but
Not
better
enough.
than Trump, in my
But then the moment I saw Pennsylvania go, I was like, oh, we're done. We're fucked. And since then, I think like every other American who listens, I've been horror struck. And I'll tell you the thing that really, really did it for me was, the day they fired Comey, and then there was a series of...
It was about February of 2017-ish.
Yeah.
Roughly. A month or two into his presidency.
Maybe even March, but
Maybe March.
What happened was he fired Comey, and then there were revelations about that over and over and over again for a good 2-3 days, where it was like breaking news, and that messed up my head indefinitely, like to this day.
The Comey firing or the breaking news?
What
onslaught?
happened was once Comey was fired, I felt like, I can't turn off MSNBC. And that's what...
Out of obligation or
like fear that
Okay.
something else would happen and I would miss it or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was. And there's a combination of two things there. Paying attention to news where it's the same news basically it's the same 4 stories over and over and over and over again over
Right.
the course of a day. That's really bad. And then the other thing is, I think I need to not watch MSNBC because MSNBC, and I figured this out because I was in Cape Cod recently where we don't have television. So I was
Nice.
just listening to NPR. And NPR is, for all their flaws, much more dispassionate about information. MSNBC is, as much as they do tell the truth,
Right.
and they're not wrong for the most part,
Right.
they are subtly inflammatory. So if by the end of the day you're fucking worked up.
Is it MSNBC that's inflammatory, or just the nature of what's being reported works you up?
It's more that's my point, was that the if you sit and you listen to the same information
Yeah.
being delivered from NPR,
Right.
you're not as freaked out.
I see what you're saying.
It's not as, I mean,
It comes with a different sense of urgency or flavor.
yeah,
Some sort of.
I mean,
yeah.
and by the way, I don't think
Has NPR taken a weird turn lately? And I don't listen as much as I used to. Back when I was a much younger liberal, they were my go-to before podcasting was very common, and so I always listen to NPR.
I think
but aren't they kind of like towing the line in the middle, like a little too much dispassion? Like they're just acting like, oh yeah, this is what's normal. This
well,
is kinda
I've never
Donald
had
Trump put some more kids in a cage today.
the
when coming up.
fury that the Pacifica people have had against NPR. I've always felt like NPR, for the most part, delivers information, and they deliver the information you need, and they do it with some level of being dispassionate, and I definitely appreciate that right now.
Right.
Like I don't feel inflamed, but I feel informed.
Okay.
There are definitely spots where they fall down. Like they have underwriters that they have underreported against.
Right.
Every once in
I
a
mean,
while.
they're paid to not cover.
Yeah,
It would be the other way of phrasing
essentially.
it. Okay. That's the kind of stuff that I think I've detected, but I don't listen to.
But the thing is that
regularly.
those stories are few and far between, and I would push back on the idea that like they don't cover global warming or something like that, because they
Okay.
do. And it also, the other thing is that NPR will have a BBC hour, like they'll have a world news hour, which
Okay.
I have no idea that the rest of the world exists right now.
It's easy to lose track of that.
It's
hard. That's like one of the things I wish I could do is understand foreign policy more. Meaning, like I think I have some sense of it, and it informs a lot of my views and opinions, and vice versa. But I'm more dialed into domestic issues and policies because I only have so much bandwidth. It's so hard to cover all of it, and I'm doing a bad job covering the domestic shit. Anyway.
No, I agree.
It's overwhelming.
And it's very hard to. It is impressive, and I don't think this is by design, but it is impressive the way Trump can manage to take up so much air. It's because so what happens is you really aren't focusing on almost anything other than what shitstorm has some Twitter rant created.
The cloud, like the cartoon brawl with the fists and the legs and the occasional Yosemite Sam sticks his head out and goes, "You boy!" and then goes back into the fight. He's the cloud. He's this commotion. It never stops. But who benefits from it? He does. Because nobody can orient themselves in a way that's meaningful. So it's impossible to form proper resistances, to use that word. It's so like this chaos and this confusion. It's not deliberate, but it's. They would be remiss if they lost it. So it is deliberate that it keeps happening.
There's so many
meaning like the details don't matter, but the outcome is what they're going for, which is that you're too overwhelmed by the chaos to respond.
And I think was it Politico? Maybe it was Politico, which I have very mixed feelings about. But it was.
Ooh, me too.
But they used to have a section that they were pretty ardent about for a good year or two, of like, here's what happened while you were paying attention to Trump. Like, here are the policy things. And they even kind of stopped that. But like, I wouldn't even look at that because it was so depressing.
Right.
Like the shit that they were getting away with. I mean, I was just listening to a thing about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and how they're dismantling it to the point that I mean, if you have a student loan, you're fucked. And that was like one of their departments that was doing some of the best work going. Right. And they have all but dismantled that. And there are, when this is a good example, the Bush administration had made a deal basically before the Obama administration. One of the last things that they did, they said, if you work in certain service sectors of teaching, or you're a fireman, or you're a policeman, or you're a nurse or something, we'll forgive your student loan debt at the end of 10 years. Well, that's gone.
Thanks to Joe Biden. He had a lot to do with the bankruptcy bill that made it impossible to discharge student loan debt. It's the only type of debt you cannot get rid of in bankruptcy.
And frankly, Hillary Clinton signed off on that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people
bill.
did, but
it was a terrible bill.
Yeah,
but
Biden did a big part in that because he's from Delaware.
During the financial crisis, the Department of Education assumed a lot of those loans. It actually would have made it very easy to do a workaround on that. And
you mean a workaround for the bankruptcy thing?
Yeah, they could have dispensed a lot of those loans.
Yeah,
and the reason why they're not is because every one of those loans, per person, is worth $2 a month to the banks that are administrating them. The interesting thing is that the banks aren't holding they aren't holding the notes. They're just doing the administrative work.
Right.
And so for doing that administrative work, they get $2 a month per person, and there's 44 million Americans right now with student loan debt, which is, a lot. And so it's worth a fortune to the banks. But the thing is that it's the United States government at this point that holds a lot of those notes. Right.
And they do make money, right? Doesn't I think I've seen that the government makes a profit off of a lot of the, because
they do.
Most people pay them back or try to, and it's this heavy ball and chain holding people's entire lives down.
Yeah, but they're in
the first 15 or 20 or 30 years of their working career.
We could easily dispense with those loans.
Yeah.
It's not the United States government is not the driving force. It's the financial services industry that is they're the ones who are lobbying to keep a lot of those rules in place.
Well, like everything in America, the government's not calling the shots. The people who pay the politicians call the shots.
Yeah, they're
the ones whose the policies reflect their interests.
Yeah, it's a corporatocracy.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good word to describe it. All right, so then you're moving into the first year of Trump, and were you paying really close attention? I mean, after the Comey thing, you said that
it would be like
hard not to
wake up, turn on MSNBC and then basically I would be in and out of the room for the rest of the day.
Right.
And by the end of the day, I would be in a fucking froth. I mean, one of the things that makes this emotionally so difficult is you start your head. Once it gets going, my head starts seeing all the connections to everything else, and by the end of the day, you're in the most toxic place spiritually, where you're like, the injustice of it all. Like, you're looking at things in such a macro level, and you feel so helpless. And I
relate to that feeling, that daily, and then it just bleeds into other of your emotional systems, like anxiety and other things that kind of just your response to it is now you have to cope. Now you have to deal with these feelings of powerlessness and of anger and of frustration. And if those of us that have enough privilege, we get to look away. We get to turn it off because we're not caged in we're not a 5-year-old Guatemalan girl who had to sign away her rights to some court in Texas. She doesn't get to ignore it. That's the
here's the thing about that is that
not that I'm some noble person for paying attention. I'm not
look at the flip side of that, which is that our understanding of the news, of our understanding of what's happening in our government is a luxury. There are a lot of people who they are worried about where the calories are coming from that day. Our engagement in our government is a luxury, and
there's a form of in this current era. I would totally agree with that. I would also suggest that the ideal government would be one that you barely know is there, but their presence is always felt. Meaning, like, they do a good job administering society. They're boring, and they're predictable.
Good government isn't noticed.
A utopian government would be very boring.
Yeah.
We don't want exciting government. We're not looking for ratings. That's one of the things about this Trump era is like, it's good for the media. Pause for the plane to travel past. Probably those black helicopters. I don't want a government that gets good ratings.
No, I agree.
Or that the media benefits from covering.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I mean, that's not a switch that we can flip right now. Get to that. We're going to be in some exciting government for the next long time. I think probably for the next.
I think
years.
that has made people understand the value of the bureaucracy.
Right.
Of like all these. That is a big red flag with me when people say deep state. I'm like, I miss the deep state. I fucking miss those guys. They were making the trains run on time. And making you realize, like, the trains running on time shouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, right. At the same time.
You shouldn't get, to quote my favorite philosopher, Chris Rock, you shouldn't get credit for things you're supposed to do.
Right.
Right?
And that is what a good governance should be.
Let me make a note here. I got the daily Chris Rock quote out of the way. I do one per episode, Robert. That's one of my things.
Well done.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there are worse people to quote.
Watch my special by Chris Rock. That's last week's.
I usually try to get my Florence Henderson quote in once a week.
Is she the Brady Bunch mom?
Brady Bunch mom.
Yeah, fuck yeah. See, I know my
Use Crisco. There you go. That's Florence.
Beautiful. I'm writing it down. I spelled it with a C. Clarence Henderson.
So now my big thing is just don't turn on an MSNBC first thing in the morning.
Well, I go through phases with similar things where, like, I tend to grab the phone first thing in the morning, and it's not good. It's very bad to just dump the world's pain into your face before your brain is even finished booting up. And I do it all the time. And
what's your go-to?
Twitter.
Twitter is
I usually
the first
start
thing.
with Twitter, and then and I start reading articles, and I start going down various rabbit holes or whatever. I'll flip over to Instagram, see if anybody new butt pictures are up. Go back to Twitter.
Have you noticed that Twitter, even really in the last 2-3 months, like the politics on it has gone down a little bit because people are just tired? Like there's only so much you can say about.
I think in the run up to the election, that's added a lot of energy to this. We're under a month now.
I feel like
getting close to 3 weeks. To the
all
election.
that stuff is just like. And maybe this is purely my take on things, but it looks like my Twitter feed is sort of like, we're going to talk about maybe sports and some pop culture things, because at this point, if you're not voting, I don't know, even you're not following me.
Right.
If you're not going to vote, if you're not pissed off, I don't know what to say to you anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, stuff will pop up where it's like, I'm pissed off about this, I'm pissed off about that. But like the outrage level per text has gone down a little bit in my experience.
I think that, yes, I'm not disagreeing or agreeing, because that this thing about Twitter is you kind of create your own magazine rack. It's how I describe Twitter. It's sort of like or podcasting too. It's like you remember the old bookstores where they used to have the internet printed on paper?
Yeah.
Yeah. You could bring pieces of the internet home. You could even burn them in large piles.
I still do that once in a while,
and
just to feel old timey. I take my giant front wheel bike over there, and
when you go out for a malt beverage.
Yeah. I say, fella,
how about a root beer? Then?
How about a root beer?
I sure could go for one of those books.
Those books or magazine things.
What is this paper? We used to line the bird cage. Now I put my iPad at the bottom of the bird cage. I can't afford to keep buying iPads. Anyway, the magazine, like, you get so you create your feed on Twitter, and I do on mine. So it's our own self-selecting bubble. But
I have a very political feed.
Yeah, I don't use the word bubble badly, in a bad connotation in this sense. But I definitely have noticed that too, the waxing and waning of different people's intensities or not, or my own too. I mean, I had a job for a little while. I was tweeting less. And now that I have this podcast, I tweet probably less, because I save the thoughts for the bonkers time when I'm just solo talking.
It's just so fucking crazy.
It really does. It's not. Especially when there's no audience and you haven't even published the first one. That's when it really felt nuts.
Oh yeah.
At least it's even crazier if you don't ever put it up. That's I mean,
Oh,
come
if you
on.
just bank it like Prince style, like just put it in the vault.
Just put it in my grave with me. But yeah, it's not trying to switch to that. But the overall energy levels. I mean, I think that's part of the one of the systems of oppression that we're being subjected to right now.
Outrage fatigue.
Outrage fatigue and just being overwhelmed. I think a big factor in that too is ignorance of how the government works. Like I think that a lot of people just don't know what the president does.
I think
the fucking people in the government don't know what the government does. Rick Perry didn't know what the Department of Energy did.
that was
when
the
he was
most
appointed.
infuriating thing. And by the way, DOE is fucked. But one of the things that I'm very
DOE, Department of Energy. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
I actually just
I
started
was like, what rapper is
Michael
DOE?
Lewis's book. Was it The Fifth Crisis? I think. And who I love Michael Lewis.
Okay.
But all of his initial stuff are just talking about how the DOE was so fucked.
Yeah. The department oversees our nuclear arsenal.
Yeah.
Should be.
And
The person in charge should know what the
basically
department does.
all Trump did was staff it with people who don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Right.
And like, if you think Rick Perry is any hope, you're wrong. Like, if Rick Perry were actually in charge of it, and because most cabinet secretaries are essentially figureheads, and so
Yes, it's a political role.
yeah,
Yeah.
if the people under them aren't actually, if the deep state
Right.
is not given information and direction, they're totally fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I mean, the
they're-
guy under Obama was, I don't know his name, but he was a nuclear scientist. He was like a well-known professor or some kind of like a whole entire career in the nuclear world.
And
So it's good.
what
And
Trump did was he staffed all of the executive branches with people who are beyond grossly incompetent to the point where a lot of them they look at their mandate of like, I am here to destroy this agency.
see, I would take issue with your use of the word competent because the competent implies there's a goal.
Right. That's the thing.
They're very competent at their goal.
Their
They're
goal.
incompetent at yours goal and my goal, which is to have a safe, sane, stable, intelligent, functioning government.
To be fair,
that puts
if they
the
were
interests of the
good,
people before
if they
the
were good at their
private
goals, I would have a nuke right now. I would be able to buy one on the open market.
Your goal is to get yourself a nuke?
No,
Or you
I'm
do the Trump-
saying I could do it if they had really destroyed the DOE as quickly and efficiently as
dismantling
competently
and literally
as,
selling the nukes on the black.
Yeah.
I don't think we're there. I worry Russia might be in that stage of their nuclear arsenal, but I don't know.
Which is, and that really is a
It's-
problem
it's
because the DOE
scary.
had an incredible presence in post-Soviet Russia, basically helping them dismantle their nuclear arsenal. And
Safely dismantle or dismantle it for resale?
no, what they did an amazing job of, they turned a lot of their nuclear weapons into energy grade
Really?
rods and basically handed it right back to the former Soviet republics. It was an amazing program, and it was a good example of what we were talking about, where it didn't call attention to itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it really helped the world get safe, because if you think about it, there were all these nuclear missiles, safer.
Yeah.
But there were all these nuclear weapons in a country that had no fucking money. Nobody had money, and the biggest danger was the local soldiers dismantling the thing,
Right.
giving the rods to whatever Al Qaeda affiliate
Sure.
happened to walk by and offer them $10.
One of these Nicolas Cage types.
and they got in there and
Lord
they
of
went,
War. That's what I'm- yeah.
They went, we're gonna dismantle this shit so that you can't do that.
Okay.
It was an amazing program. It was very successful. It gave a lot of energy to post-Soviet Russia. It was phenomenal.
Was that during denuclearization? Because the numbers
It
have
was-
gone down, like, right? The Russian and American arsenals are less than they were at their peaks, correct?
They are. They're much less because and I mean,
And
Asimov, not Asimov, Carl Sagan pointed out, like, the numbers are disproportionate to the entire planet.
Well, yeah,
Like,
they need like 20 to kill
yeah,
the planet.
we still have
many thousands.
many to kill the planet.
Yeah.
We're doing just
There's
fine.
one or two submarines out there that could end the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
so that's nice.
and by the way, that's one of the few things where I kind of side with Trump, in the sense that his entire thing was, we need to rebuild the nuclear arsenal. he's not wrong in the sense that we need to get in there and get some of the technology fixed. If we're going to have nuclear missiles, we have very, very old
for
nuclear
safety. Yes, I've seen
the computers we have in there are ancient.
Like
I mean,
they look like a Commodore 64 would be a huge upgrade to those computers.
My God!
They're carrying around 5.25-inch diskettes.
Yeah,
remember the floppy disks? Not the hard floppies, the soft, wavy floppy disks that.
Right. But
they're still using those.
1950s
and 60s technology.
The one positive of that is they're virtually unhackable.
Well, that's one factor, yeah.
I mean, but the reality is that if we're going to have a nuclear arsenal, it needs to be upgraded.
Yeah.
And to safety.
Right. In that sense, I wouldn't say Trump is ever correct, but like that's not his goal, though. I mean, Trump has talked about it for terms of weaponizing, making smaller nukes for tactical use.
Yeah.
Which tactical is just a euphemistic word for murdering millions. Like it's still there's no such thing as a tactical nuke.
That still drives me crazy. Is that people don't remember the news story that was very clear, where there were people talking to him in his early intelligence briefings, having to explain to him, here's why you can't nuke other countries. Right. Like, he's like, why? Why can't you use atomic weapons? It's like, because it would be the end of civilization all over the world. You don't just nuke a country.
Yeah.
Like,
giving I think that's. I mean, it's hard to talk about nukes without sounding insane, because I don't think our minds are really capable of comprehending the destruction. Like it's like astronomy. Like it's really difficult to conceptualize the size of the universe, the size of the galaxy. I mean, like we think we can. We have cool ways of showing it, thanks to Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Carl Sagan #2. That's not fair to him. But like, in terms of this nuclear destruction stuff, we lose all sense of that. No idea. Especially not.
And if you have a Trumpian childlike sense of the world,
right?
Of how consequences work.
That dominance paradigm where all that matters is who comes out on top, who wins this moment.
Right.
And nukes are pretty dominant, except it's planetary suicide.
It's planetary suicide at this point. I mean,
that's one of the things for me, though, that really clarified my fear about that is like more about how we select leadership in this country. A big thing that I'm trying to explore with this podcast is how does power get assigned and how does wealth and power get distributed and assigned. The fact that we took a guy with no political experience, although that you could argue with that. You could actually say he's got decades of political experience because he's been muddling around in politics, New York and East Coast for quite a long time, just putting himself as a candidate.
He's been shooting his mouth off for decades.
Yes.
That's not
and
politics.
The birther thing, well...
That's policy. Like,
it's not policy.
The thing is,
but
politics is about policy. It's about actually...
Can you hold that thought for a second?
Yeah.
Let me finish. So, but the fact that our system chose a person like Trump and then gave that guy nuclear weapons. Donald Trump has 6 minutes to kill the planet if he wants to. That guy, I don't like that Obama had the power to kill the planet at all. I don't trust that guy to have fucking nuclear weapons. I don't trust anybody. It shouldn't be a thing that exists.
But I think
I'd rather have Obama carrying around the nuclear football than Trump, or the sergeant who does it for him.
This is one of the reasons why I think that civics needs to be a federally required part of the curriculum.
100%.
Because if you have any sense of what the Constitution is about, what the Founding Fathers were about, it was that this is exactly what they were afraid of. Precisely.
Right. In terms of like the 25th Amendment.
The centralization of power at this level. The fact that somebody who was populist without being intelligent would get in. I mean, the reality is that one of the functions of the Electoral College was to stop this. Now, granted, one of the other ones was to give more power to slave states, but one of them was to stop this. And that went out the window 20 years into the country. Mm-hmm. But it was supposed to be able to go, wait a second, you cannot elect this guy.
Right.
One of the functions of the party system is to select out lunatics like this
Yeah.
early on. It used to be that the party system was not as democratic. It was like bosses in a smoke-filled room going, there's no fucking way that guy's getting here.
Yeah.
One of the functions of the Senate was supposed to be a more deliberative body that actually was one of the smarter people from that state and not somebody
Allegedly,
like Mike Lee, who couldn't find his car keys in his asshole.
Remind me who Mike Lee is?
Mike Lee
Is he a
is
senator?
from Utah, I think. He's a piece of shit.
Oh, yeah, Senator Mike Lee. Yeah, I know.
He's definitely God's gift to deliberative
Did he
process.
replace Harry Reid?
No, that's Nevada.
Oh, okay.
That's
gotcha.
Nevada, and that's not Dean Heller, because Dean Heller's up. I can't remember who replaced Harry Reid, but
That's okay.
and by the way, Dean Heller needs to be voted out really, really
Right.
badly.
Yeah.
That is miraculous how much the Republican Party just rolled over and went, I care more about being reelected than anything.
Well, what you just said speaks to what I was going to add to the checks and balances of like the original founding fathers, like you were describing. Other than the fact that the country is founded as a white ethno state to facilitate genocide and land theft, and maintain power in as small hands as possible. The original, I mean, that's how the Constitution was written. But what I'm saying is that what they assumed is that the legislative branch would function as a check on the executive, as
Right.
it's designed to. However, when both parties are the same, it should still be a check, even when both parties are the same. But in this case, and has been the case for a long time, especially this crowd of Republicans, they're tied to Trump. So it's like this. Not only have we nationalized local elections thanks to the internet and to how information is spread, and national identities are sort of being
I wish we'd nationalized them more. I wish people paid more attention to their local election.
true. But along with someone like Trump comes, and then now everything is about him, and he's running on that now. Like he's going and doing his rallies to support local midterm elections, saying, you're not voting for this guy, you're voting for me. You're voting for me because the Democrats are going to come after me. So you got to vote for, Jimmy Two Guns over here. Got more than two guns. Just, got the nickname when he only had two when he was a 4-year-old. So, but that's part of that failure of the imagination of the founders, who they didn't think that you'd ever have a legislative branch that was so bought and paid for by the corporations and by the same people that control the president in a way. I don't mean that Trump is controllable, but there's a lot of people are using him as cover to advance this right-wing agenda. Much further than I think they would have gotten had they just had like a sane, competent maniac.
I think if we were dealing with norms, and let's say, for instance, Mike Pence was president, he would get away with a great deal of this stuff. Make no mistake, a lot of this shit would get through, but not as much.
Let me ask you that. I was thinking about this the other day. Because Mike Pence is essentially like Trump without the boner. Like he's like, Mike Pence probably has boner. He has radical Christian theology undergirding most of his positions. He's a hardcore right-wing extremist. Mike Pence is. He wanted to force you to have funerals for fetuses. He's Mullah Omar in America. He's Christian Taliban.
He's basic, but the thing is, he's George W. Bush in a slightly different guise.
I think.
In terms of adhering to norms, he would,
Yes, in that sense, I think I'd agree with that in comparing him to George W. Bush.
And
but
let's not forget George W. Bush, huge piece of shit.
Oh, enormous. And that's one of the things that's been frustrating lately, especially Michelle Obama with the candy. Not that she was up to anything, but just the way power normalizes itself. We all look back. The McCain funeral was absurd, the whole thing. But yeah, George W. Bush, still worse than Trump, and in absolute terms. And also we have more hindsight on his presidency, too. So I think ultimately Trump will probably shake out to be worse because of his participation in this fascistic upswelling.
I think he's already
long term.
He's worse in any number of ways.
Yeah. But in sheer numbers of people killed, Bush W still wins that one by a long mile.
So far. I think the deconstruction of the regulatory state, the fact that the pollution alone will kill plenty of people. The deconstruction of Obamacare will kill plenty of people. I think that the loss of our alliances with Europe
Right.
will kill any number of people. I think that our relationship with Saudi Arabia has killed a lot of Yemenis, and granted that occurred under the Obama administration.
Yeah.
But it's certainly getting much worse.
Well, we're selling them lots of money. We're selling them lots of guns.
You know, that's a lot of that's a lie.
Well, recently it's not actually a thing that's happening, but they did do a big sale this first year.
They did,
Big
but
arms.
that's been in the works for
Right.
a long time.
Yeah.
But their claim that they're like, we still have $100 billion of stuff to sell them. It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can bend them over a barrel. You can say like, yeah, we're going to sell you this, but we're not
Right.
going to sell you the parts that go with it.
Sure.
I mean, you can all of a sudden an F-15 fighter becomes basically a paperweight if you don't sell them the parts that go with it.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's why they should all be driving Priuses.
yeah,
Those things don't break down.
yeah, they do.
Well, I hope they don't, because mine has a check engine light on, and I can't afford to have it looked at. So, willful delusion, man. Come on, you're stressing me out, Robert. We're jumping around a lot.
You want to talk about Saudi Arabia?
Not right now. I wanted to finish this thought about Pence, because I think it's an interesting question that, like, one of the things that is saving us from Trump is Trump's stupidity. Okay, sorry everybody. We had a brief technical mistake there. The technical mistake was I'm stupid. I came over. I didn't plug the laptop in. I had everything set up, but no power was feeding to the laptop. So I looked over and the monitor was totally dark, and I was like, "Oh no!" Because I said a really funny joke about how kids have to wear backpacks to school. Now I'm upset that we don't get to say that. Now it just sounds weirdly out of context. And I was laughing at the pain of American school children.
Well, the way we got there in a dreamlike way is you asked me about Mike Pence, and would Mike Pence really be better in any meaningful way than Trump?
Let me throw that. Yeah, I was saying Trump's stupidity has saved us, and my question is basically, would Mike Pence, who has similar policy goals as Trump, achieve as much or not as much, given that he wouldn't make the same amount of self goals? Because Trump is his own dumbassness gets in the way of his intentions.
And I push back on the premise of that, which is I think that the Trump administration has been extremely effective in terms of, they haven't gotten a lot of legislation passed, but remember that the legislation they failed to pass, it died in the Senate. It didn't die because of Trump's failure.
The ACA.
The ACA
mainly.
destruction.
Yeah.
But he's gotten his judges through. He did get the tax cut, which is amazingly unpopular to this day.
They're not even running on it. The Republicans.
Well, the thing about that, by the way, is like, one, they shouldn't run on it because nobody likes it. But second of all, you don't run on something you already did. Like saying like, oh, I promise you we're going to have a tax cut we already gave you.
Right.
You can't run on that. You have to run on something that you plan to do.
Well, you could run on both. I don't think you can run on that alone. I mean, it's if you have a record of delivering, like if I had a girlfriend, I'd be like, remember that one time I gave you an orgasm?
Right.
I got another one next year.
Yeah.
I'll try really hard if the fucking Democrats would let me. Fucking Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Paul Ryan, even though you're retiring, you fucking coward. Trying to give you a good one here. Is
Schumer retired?
Concentrate. No, Paul Ryan's retiring.
Paul Ryan.
I wish Schumer would retire. We need to get rid of those.
That guy is not a very smart man.
No.
Exactly. But the thing is that I think that not in terms of legislation, but in terms of policy, I think that Trump's
and regulatory destruction
has destroyed. He's done exactly what he intended, which was destroy basically the entire infrastructure, the executive branch.
Yeah.
And if that's your goal, then he did it. So
would Pence be able
I think Pence would be actually less effective in terms of that because of his I think just institutional respect for the bureaucracy. And also,
at least compared to Trump, he has some. I mean, I think he'd still push
Trump
in
has
ways
the dumb
that are
ignorance.
norm-violating, but not to the degree that Trump does.
If you could pull Trump aside and by some miracle explain to him, for example, the DOE, this is what the DOE, it prevents the world from blowing up.
Right.
He would not have gone in there like a bull in a china shop. You can do that with Pence. You can scare him. the reason why Trump has been so effective at destroying the administrative state is because he has no idea how much the administrative state protects everybody.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of that, Pence wouldn't be as effective. He would be probably a better articulator of, and not by much, but of his own like bullshit conservative Jesus makes babies kind of shit. But, and by the way, yeah, no, fetuses should definitely have firearms. That's the way
They should.
Yeah.
Otherwise, how are they going to shoot back against active shooters? You know, I mean, come on. What are we going to do? Send our fetuses out into the world unarmed? It's ridiculous.
Wait for that one.
What they wanted, the founding fathers, was for fetuses to have weapons.
That really is our entire society right now is an absurdum, is a reducto ad absurdum, where it's like,
all right, explain that for stupid people.
If you play the tape out, things become absurd.
Yeah.
So if you go with and the example I would use is the NRA has just routinely put forward policies that have gotten weirder and weirder and more absurd.
Yes.
Where once you have the premise that guns are the solution to everything, then they get weird. You get to the point where people are like, well, we should arm teachers. That's 20 years ago, if you had said arm teachers, 90% of this country, 95% of this country would have laughed you out of the fucking room.
As they should.
As they should. Now, 30% of the country's like, yeah, that's
right.
a good idea. That's not a bad idea right there.
Yeah.
No, it's terrible. It's a horrific idea.
It's hard to articulate how brutal and reducto ad infinitum or whatever the fuck. What did you say?
Reductio ad absurdum. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Guess
my brother took Latin.
The source of the problem and also the place where it's occurring, Florida. We all saw that coming. To be fair.
What, the Parkland thing, or
no? That
coming from Florida.
That the worst ideas would be caused and birthed in Florida, of course.
As it's the gonad sack of the country, but that's also where all the bad ideas from most people come from their balls. That made no sense.
It's the worst
political
place
analysis
in the world.
Yes, it is.
Florida is I think of as the bizarro California.
Why is that? What is it about it? How can we explain that?
Florida is a very, very large state with basically it's 3 states in one. It's a huge state with very competing ideas, and
because northern Florida would be like the South.
Northern Florida is
the
basically the
Panhandle
South, and then you have these weird, pockets of Judaism and pockets of just white privilege, and then the Cuban right,
kind of Caribbean wealthy sort of.
I think that there are any number of reasons. One of the reasons is really interesting is that they have sunshine laws.
Sunshine laws?
One of the best things about Florida is that they have very, very strict sunshine laws where things have to be a matter of public record that a lot of other states can keep secret. So there are a lot of police incidents that have to go on the blotter.
That are normally held from the public in other states.
And so that's one of the reasons why headlines from Florida are always absurd.
Oh, well, because it's not Florida. They just have that everywhere.
There are guys who would be fucking gators in any state. It just happens to make the police blotter in Florida.
Right. So I used to fuck gators in Illinois all the time.
Yeah.
Especially those winter gators, those snowy ones.
Winter gators.
Yep, they're a little slower when they're cold.
We call them toothy women, but... So anyway,
taking some weird turns.
Yeah, we can sit and make fun of Florida all day, but it is a very strange state.
Okay, like L.A., for instance. One of the things I've learned about Los Angeles is that it's very ordinary.
It's an amazingly ordinary.
One of the things that doesn't make it into the output is how ordinary it is. Like here, there are like so from an outsider's perspective on LA, and I'm still mainly an outsider here, but from Chicago, LA I thought was Hollywood glitz and glam and all that bullshit, and rich and the hills and whatever. And the only other thing was like gang fights and
I like the way you call it gang fights.
Graffiti, like
Right.
Boys to Men, or not Boys to Men, Boys in the Hood. That's the movie,
Yeah.
because I'm of the age where that was an influential film. But when you move to LA, you realize, oh, they have everything that's ordinary about everywhere else. They have doctors, nurses, restaurants, truck drivers, gas stations. I mean, all these like regular neighborhoods, just tree-lined streets and normal houses and garbage collection and all this shit that's ordinary everywhere else is also here.
Yeah.
It's just outshone by that kind of entertainment business veneer. And I think Florida probably suffers from a similar thing. There's a lot of ordinary going on down there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to defend Florida, is what I'm saying.
And I agree.
Yeah.
And I would agree even more if it weren't for the fact that Florida has this insane Republican legislature that does
Right.
things like make it illegal to talk about global warming in the
Right.
legislature. You know,
Yes.
I would agree, except for the fact that Florida has played a major part in electing two of the worst presidents of all time.
Right.
I would agree if it weren't for the fact that Florida has a Cuban population that somehow has leveraged the rest of the country into believing that one day we're going to take Cuba back.
Really?
Yeah, they're like,
I didn't even know they were trying to. What
they're still
back?
convinced.
You mean, did we have it at one point, or just?
Well, we did under Batista, but they're
Yeah.
like they're convinced that one day that the communist government is going to end there, and they're going to get all their land back.
Oh, that they'll. Okay, I see.
Like they're
A return to Cuba, but under the American umbrella.
or something like that. But they still are sitting there. Not every American president, every Secretary of State worth their salt has looked at Cuba since probably Reagan and said, yeah, you know, at some point we should normalize relationships here because it doesn't help us. And especially since the fall of the Soviet Union, you sit there and you go, there's no reason for us not to have a normal relationship
Right.
with Cuba.
Other than the absurd reducto ad absurdum of I'm just a stupid person trying to
That's
repeat
all right,
a word
it's
I
all right.
heard.
I barely
I'm like
understand
a
it
bird
myself.
that like picked up a cigarette and is like taking it back to its nest and thinks it found something special.
Smoking birds would be the cutest thing.
The notion of I fucking forgot. It's gone. It's gone.
Cuba.
I know.
But
it's not there.
let me put it this way. We could have a very productive, financially very productive, socially very productive relationship with Cuba. Cuba could be part of NAFTA. It would be nothing but a positive. Whereas, you know, I mean, think of all the bad relationships we have because...
Right.
Just cuz. I mean,
You're right, yeah.
Saudi Arabia, Pakistan.
I just remembered my Cuban thought there was we maintained our belligerent stance, our adversarial stance towards Cuba out of sheer
muscle memory.
Well, that and like an emotional muscle memory. Like, oh, you don't want to look weak and
Right.
and offer up some sort of sane response to this situation that clearly could be a lot better for all the people.
Absolutely.
We have to maintain strength and a strong position, and it's a proxy fight. Like, and so that kind of
And which, by the way,
juvenile, immature posturing that's so common in our politics is what kept a lot of that going.
Even strategically, that's so bad because you look at our experience over and over and over and over again is when we, as capitalists, which is the one thing we do well, engage another country, it always makes for a better relationship. Always. We have a much better relationship with China than we ever had prior now. We have a much better relationship with Vietnam than we ever had.
Right.
So these
You mean our corporations do, or we do?
No, we do. And the reality is I don't love corporatocracy. I don't love capitalism as such. But the reality is that when people understand, like, oh no, we've good shit to sell you. We think you might have some good shit to sell us.
Where they have cheap labor to sell.
Right.
That's their main
but
product.
they have sugar cane. They
Yeah.
have, I mean, they have,
yeah, they're huge. Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of stuff to sell us, but like it raises their quality of life. It raises our quality of life by having a new trading partner. Like those are things that stabilize relationships and just make them better. They make people less interested in going, well, I'm in a corner, so I'm going to do whatever I have to do to fuck you, so you don't back me deeper into the corner.
I agree. Yeah, compared to feeling cornered or to more of a adversarial kind of
But
stance. That makes a lot. I agree with what you're saying.
And also,
I would add that I hope that what you're describing is a stepping stone towards a better society for the Chinese people and the American people. Like the average dope on the street should have material improvements to their lives because of our relationships with other countries, not because of capitalistic
absolutely.
exchanges. Because in that sense, the capitalistic part of it concentrates the benefits from it all, and that's what my
That's
whole
true,
hope is.
but
I'm not
on the
saying
same
this 'cause I
token,
think you disagree,
let's look at China.
Yeah.
China, the quality of life for the average urban Chinese citizen is infinitely better.
Yeah, they're starting to get diabetes just like we do.
They're definitely downsides, but the quality of life overall is much, much higher. The fate of China is much more tied to us, so that there's strategically much less reason for animosity to be the way things function.
Right.
It's been there are a lot of problems.
There's a security to capitalism in a sense that corporations would rather have peace than war. Most would. There's certainly corporations that would prefer war because they're weapons makers and fear mongers. But overall, this is one of the checks on Trump that I think is probably operating more than we realize, is that, although there's still obviously a lot of opportunism going on, but is that the corporations don't want to be too disturbed. They need things to change somewhat slowly, or very slowly, or not at all. That's why change is never fast, because corporations control governments and they don't allow change to happen quickly because they have to have time to adapt their profit centers.
And by the way, under
sense,
Trump, the thing that they used to always say about Obama, they would say, "Oh, well, there's uncertainty in the market." It's like there's been more uncertainty in the last 2 years than there's ever been in the markets.
Right.
And after the initial exuberance of this presidency, it's starting to show.
And the stock buybacks bought them a lot of upward swing, but that's not because of positive economic activity. That's just hoarding their wealth and pouring it back into their
what we've seen
in
this presidency is someone who doesn't understand the importance of regulating a large capitalist economy, the absolutely essential nature, because we could be building the worst crash ever, much worse than 2008.
Do you think we're
right
nearing a crash?
I don't know enough about economics. I do know. I would say this. I would say that we are creating a situation, I think, where if you pull one of the Jenga pieces out, we got a real problem, and that could happen very easily in, say, the commodities market.
Okay.
I think that the 2008 crash and realizing that the bond market was not as stable as we thought it was.
Yeah.
Since then, things in a lot of ways have gotten worse in terms of stabilizing, and we're going backwards. We're going to destabilize the banks within the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. I think that if something goes horribly wrong, it will ripple so quickly through the economy and make your head spin.
Yeah. The underlying conditions have not been treated towards preventing. Like, we haven't increased regulation. We haven't made it harder for the financial shenanigans to go about. They have even more control than they did before. Mm-hmm. And the leadership we're currently under, I would be expecting a crash if Hillary were in office at some point here, too. I think it'll be accelerated by Trump.
I think the destruction
I do think something's coming.
Of the very mild regulations that were put in place in 2008, which were very mild.
Yeah.
And should have been much stronger.
Right.
Dodd-Frank, those are being destroyed. And at the same time, we're deregulating so many other things. I just think, and we're all always in trouble because we've been on the precipice for a good 20, 30 years because of infrastructure issues, mm-hmm. because of global warming, because any of these things which, had we paid for them earlier, would have cost a lot less. If, for example, we have a serious global warming crisis and not the boiling frog scenario we've got going now, where all of a sudden we have to pay out trillions of dollars all at once, we're all going to be hurting. We're all going to be hurting.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't take much. Let me put it this way. Because all of our fates are tied together now.
Well, definitely. I mean,
so if China gets a cold, we could be fucked.
Yeah. We're all, I mean, I have multiple thoughts going around. Like, the global warming thing is, like, we're kind of, those switches, like the $1 trillion expenses that you're describing, those are going to slowly ramp up. Like, it is the boiling thing.
They're ramping up already.
With variation in how intense things are, like 2024 won't be as bad as 2025, but 2026 will be way worse. Like, meaning like the up and downs year to year, but the trend is still very much until we reach these critical masses where migration is forced, and where I actually think the coastal abandonment is going to be a fairly interesting process to watch. I would like to be able to prevent it, but I think it's mostly going to be related to insurance, honestly.
I don't think
whether
you can
or not
prevent
businesses invest in cities near coasts that's going to sort of determine. Well, global warming will determine the pace. The rising water will, but overall, it's going to mostly be about whether or not businesses invest in coastal communities.
But you understand, like,
they won't be able to get insurance for coastal communities.
We're already paying for that because we're already paying for flood insurance.
Well, that's what I'm. Yeah.
Because flood insurance is federally administered,
right.
And there are places in, for example, the Houston floodplain, where we have bought people's houses 3 times over, and not said to them, "No, you cannot rebuild here,"
right?
And which would have been the responsible thing after the first time to say, like, this is a floodplain. We're not going to give you flood insurance. We will reimburse you for your house, but you have to go build elsewhere. No, what we did was we said, okay, rebuild, great, have at. And it's a corporatocracy. It's because those landowners or those land developers controlled that scenario because the Houston bureaucracy was weak.
And it's not their money.
And they leveraged the federal government into saying yes to it. And I think that you're going to see situations like that cascading throughout the federal government until something finally breaks.
That's what I mean, though, by, like, eventually that they'll stop rebuilding. And so it'll be left up to, like, until the water actually takes over, but there'll be sort of these, like, dead zones on the coasts, probably within the next 20 years or so. 20 to 50 years from now is the kind of time frame I'm thinking about.
And the
As
beautiful
if I have any
irony,
idea. I'm a dummy.
The beautiful irony is it's going to happen in all the states that have actively ignored global warming.
Right.
It's going to happen in
Florida,
the South Atlantic states.
Yeah.
They're all going to get hit the hardest by far and away.
Yeah. I had a passenger. I mentioned this on the last podcast, but I had a passenger in my past job who was I got to know people for a couple hours at a time, and she was a coastal flooding professor and researcher. She said that the West Coast. This is about the only thing that I could remember because I'm dumb, but she said that the West Coast is much more protected, just geographically, just by the sheer construct of the land. We're not going to be as subjected to rising water. It's still going to be problematic and definitely cause all kinds of chaos, but compared to the East. Like Florida and the Gulf and most of the East Coast, there's a lot more trouble for them than
Miami will be the first to go. Miami is at sea level.
And it's built on limestone, which is spongy, porous rock, so it's already flooding straight up from the streets.
Right. I mean, they're already screwed. Yeah. Places like Houston, they're fucked.
Right.
Galveston, they're fucked. I mean, these are just truths.
Totally.
And frankly, a big part of me wants to say to places like Florida, like, you're cut off. Like, honestly, a big part of me, if it weren't for the fact that there's so many citizens who just weren't part of this, I wanted to say to Florida when their hurricane hit, like, yeah, you're not getting FEMA money because you guys have voted against this stuff. You've denied climate. They have voted against FEMA money being given to other people. Go fuck yourselves.
Right.
Do
you think there will be legal recourse for polluters? I know that there's actually just been a lawsuit. I bookmarked the article about like children. It's like a group of kids are suing the government, claiming that they knew that this global warming thing was going on, and that they didn't do anything to address it. They're seeking, because the story was that the judge had agreed that this lawsuit can proceed. You know how that's like some of the steps in these lawsuits in these early phases. That's just one example, though. Do you think that, like, because isn't California suing the government? I don't. There's something like that. Where
so many times. I mean, there's so many lawsuits against the government,
but
from
related
California.
to or the not just government should be held accountable, but also the corporations should be hopefully targeted in these lawsuits as well.
I think you're more likely to actually stop the corporations than you are to stop the government. Although, in this instance, they're one and the same. But you're more likely to get money out of Exxon, who knew for a fact that global warming was happening and then suppressed that information, than you are the government. Because the government, just as a matter of fact, of evidence, it's very hard to prove. The government is so vast, it's very hard to prove like one hand knew what the other was doing.
Sure.
So it would be very difficult to prove that, for example, John McCain, not as great a guy as we all want to believe.
No, he's not at all.
But that he didn't know. It would be very hard to prove that he knew for a fact global warming, that this evidence was in his head.
Right.
And he voted against carbon pollution regulation.
I
anyway.
don't have the articles in front of me, so I don't want to. I'm just with that mentioned. But the failure to care for citizens, which I think is one of the things that Americans are particularly used to, a government that doesn't give a shit about them and is happy to let their interests. Your interests are only advanced by the government if it coincides with a corporation's interests. That's the only condition in which they're allowed to care about the people in this country.
For the most part.
For the most part. That the failure to defend and look out for the interests of a nation's people and allowing the planet to become uninhabitable is a failure to care for people. I think that's should be legally actionable, but what difference does it really make? We're still all going to be scuba diving around Manhattan, as if that's the worst thing that happens. We'll be dying from heat.
I mean, I think that suing the government and suing corporations over global warming, which is not unreasonable, is kind of it's on the same level as every black person in the United States suing for redress for slavery. It's not that it's wrong.
Right.
It's absolutely right. It's just not practical.
Well, yes, I don't disagree. It can bring attention to it. Unfortunately, that's something that we need to desperately.
The reality, in my estimation, of this country, generally speaking, and the Trump administration in particular, is that what we need is a Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and it'll never, ever happen.
No.
But like, there's got to be that we really are at a reckoning point where the United States has to stop, sit down, and go, wait a second.
Right.
We got some shit going on that we all have to sit down, not blame each other, but like figure out what we're doing wrong and move forward.
Yeah.
That's
so rational and sane. I expect it to happen. Never.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd agree.
We are all face to face with the worst part of democracy.
Right.
This is one of those moments where it's like, oh, the philosopher king is looking pretty fucking good right now. And
can you expand on that a little bit?
Plato's philosopher king, which I think at the time was his reaction to democracy, to the early forms of democracy. And he said, this is not good. He said, what we really need is somebody who's enlightened at the top of the heap. And to a degree, that's true. I'm also the first person to say, like, power corrupts.
Right.
But, it is very clear that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which is one of the most reasonable things that could possibly happen, will never happen in this country because there are too many people who are like, well, I'll lose out on that.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like,
it's impossible for it not to get politicized, especially in this current environment, but even the other one. Sorry about the construction there, everybody. That's
damn it.
Robert's neighbor. It's okay. You know what? It's a good thing. It's a sound of progress.
We're doing real podcasting. We're not doing this like in a studio.
That's right. We're not like a bunch of weirdos sitting inside. We're in a garage smoking
the way God intended,
sipping coffee, just like Jesus would have when he was a carpenter and a podcaster.
If Jesus was into podcasting, this is the way he would do it.
When Jesus was a failed open micer starting his podcast back up. You know what I mean? One last thing. We're over an hour, and thanks for your time, Robert.
Absolutely. I could talk about this.
It's a pleasure.
It's nice to talk about this with a person and not just having it rattle around in my head like a crazy person.
That's the one reason I started this, too. I needed to get I'm quoting myself, but I needed to get the bees out, like Candyman. Candyman, got to get those bees out of here, because like that's
Virginia Madsen. Hello.
The just the overall nature of pursuing a career in something creative is the worst thing that's happened to me, but also it's what I'm doing. Meaning, like I'm paying the price. I'm really looking forward to telling the story of when it finally turned and got better. Because I've been I've been at that low point for a long time.
Yeah, there are a lot of people whose lives have changed in my garage for the better.
This is it.
Yeah,
this is the pivot.
I've
Kate Moss got her start in this garage. So last thing, let's talk. I don't really. Here I am contributing to something I would probably rail against: the horse race bullshit. Obviously, one of the problems with America is we're in permanent election status. Especially at the federal level. So right now the midterm's coming up. Did you vote, by the way? Have you gotten are you doing an absentee, or are you a
No, I'll
day
vote
voter?
in person.
You prefer the in person, or you just don't?
I have mixed feelings about it, but the reality is that in California, at least, we have so many ballot measures we actually have to research. Like you can't just have them spoon fed to you, which is a good example of like, oh, policy's complicated.
Yeah. I found a great guide. I tweeted it. Everybody, check out my Twitter for it, at @Hank_Thompson. I found a really nice guide. A woman wrote up a bunch. She did a bunch of research, so it's kind of a shortcut.
My wife and I will sit a couple of days before the election, and we'll sit with our computers and look on like, okay, what does MoveOn.org say? What does LA Times say? What is and they all make compelling arguments. And I've certainly, on a few ballot measures, voted a more conservative line, not being a conservative, but just saying like, oh, here are all the unintended consequences of this.
Yes.
And it's a weird
it's hard
feeling
to assess
when you're sitting there going, I think I'm putting more thought into this than a lot of people who are paid to do that. That's infuriating.
Yeah.
So that's why like a lot of it's procrastination. I just don't feel like sitting down and.
So for you, the reason you vote in person is because you need the time to do the research.
I just need I need a little time.
I think that shows a lot of patriotism and maturity.
I thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I found a lady who did the work for me.
But
I mean, obviously, I've been paying attention a lot. I'm not going to vote for a Republican. You got to be a pretty horrible Democrat for me to pick the Republican in the race. But yeah.
But I like
so
Prop 10. Is it?
Yes on 10.
Now which is 10?
I don't know. I think that's the local bank. Which is that B? I think. See, I'm already confused. I don't remember.
No. Prop 10 is it's a voting. It's a renters.
Oh
issue.
Yeah, the housing thing. Yeah.
So that's one of the things.
The DSA
that,
is for a 10.
Okay.
Not that that's the automatic reason, but they had good reasons for it. The woman whose guide I found, she was very much for 10, and from what I read, I'm also for it.
I am for it
even though I
too as of
remember
now. But like 10 is a good example where it's like, wow, this is not a simple thing. There are going to be winners and losers in this, and it's a question of who is a better, what's the bigger issue going on here.
Yeah.
And I need to sit down and look at that.
Right.
I mean, I think I'm a yes on 10, but like the kidney dialysis thing?
Yeah, I saw that one.
I've
never heard of it.
Oh, Papa's got to look this shit up.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that you're talking about major legislation that has unintended consequences always has.
Well, and for a lot of us, and myself included, even though I consider myself fairly informed, my first time hearing of some of these were when I did it yesterday, my absentee ballot, or not mail-in ballot.
Yeah.
So I did put some time into like making sure I wasn't just filling in circles, but
I've come around.
Ignorance was aplenty, my friend.
I've come around on the ballot measure issue because I used to be very anti-ballot measures because my attitude is that in an ideal world, we are supposed to elect people smarter than us who are literally paid a salary to look into these issues and give their best estimate on what the right thing to do is. That is how a democracy is supposed to work. You are supposed to hire people who can do this as a living, to think about things and try to make the best decision as a living. That clearly has not worked out.
I think one of the problems with that is that politicians become celebrities. And that informs power and distorts your brain and distorts the way you contextualize your role in ways that are very unhealthy for what we need them to do. Like an ideal world for me would be people in high levels of government are looked at like community college professors, basically. You know, like at that level of like, not that that's good or bad. I'm just saying like, oh yeah, they're not stupid and they're good. They get up every day and they work hard and they make, well, I hope at the highest levels, 80 grand, make some money, 110.
Yeah.
Just not, but like you don't get to be a celebrity. And in fact, I think we should pass a law that when you're done being a politician, you get a wage from the government that is the exact match of the either minimum wage or average American income.
Well, that's one of the things
we need to impose incentives on lawmakers to make them, to force them by will of like, you will be in poverty if you do not make the world better. Like I hate that Barack Obama lives in luxury. I hate that George W. Bush falls asleep easily at night in a nice, big, comfortable bed. I hate that all these fucking people. You do not get to have a good life if you were the president of this country.
I disagree. Because
look how bad this place is.
It's a really, one of the things that's really, really interesting right now about our democracy is that incentive system, because there are people who are unwilling to speak out against their party because they're scared of being voted out of office for doing the right thing. And what's really interesting about that is not one of those people wouldn't go to a better life. A lot of senators, let's say Susan Collins would retire with her amount of time in the Senate. She would retire with a substantial pension that would last to her dying day.
Yeah.
And she would sit on corporate boards that would make her millions of dollars a year.
Consulting and lobbying, too.
Virtually every politician who's put in any serious time is in that position.
Yeah.
And they're still afraid of being voted out of office. So what is wrong with you? Like,
right. Like, why? I think that speaks to how intoxicating power is. Like, what is Susan Collins fighting for in this Kavanaugh thing, where she was at the white hot center of this huge political story? And I'm dismayed by the results, and we don't need to go over that territory again. We've talked about that on the show. But like, why? Because her punishment. So the forces on the Democratic side. Something's buzzing. Is that your microphone?
oh, it's fine.
It's fine. You know, it's fun, amazing how distracting phones are. It's like even in movies, when someone gets a text, I'm like, oh, I gotta check my pocket.
Yeah.
By the way, I think it's always a mistake in movies when they use real phone sounds that we all have. Sorry, did you have something?
When vibrating phones first came in, I started to realize like, oh, I have random vibrations throughout my body that I'm convinced are my phone now.
Oh yeah,
and I must have had them before.
Right.
I must have neuropathy.
Yeah. Any twitch below the nipples, and you're like, oh, I got a text.
There's a phone somewhere. Yeah.
My belly button's getting a text. So, all right, back to Susan Collins, and then we're going to talk about the horse race stuff, and then we'll be done. Because that's
Susan Collins should go fuck herself.
What I'm saying is, though, I agree with that. But she fought. I mean, she chose to go full in with Trump with her speech, with that big nonsense.
That speech, if she had just voted, that would have been bad.
Right.
But that speech was like, it was like watching someone drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yes.
In real time.
Yes, and then burping it back out.
Yeah.
And then with like red
and
all
mixing
over her
some
mouth.
more and put it in. Yeah.
She got into the Kool-Aid jar.
Yeah.
But she is fighting to stay in office. She wants to be reelected, right? I mean, all these people generally do. But what I'm saying, though, is like her option, it's not like she would be relegated to go back to being a bus driver somewhere and for $10 an hour. She gets to retire to more money, easier money, less work, less stress, just as much, I wouldn't say power, but influence, because now you're an influence monger. Basically, that's what lobbying, consulting, speaking to her, all this other bullshit is. So she's like, I think we need to remove those incentives entirely from the system. Like I think Elizabeth Warren's End Corruption Now bill, which is going to fail, obviously, but at least it's out there. I think it puts like a 10-year ban on lobbying work or something. But those rules need to be like anything close to resembling it. In fact, we're going to prevent you from doing it at all. In fact, you get $40,000 a year for the next 10 years
Yeah.
And I don't mean 40,000. I mean like whatever the average American salary is.
Yeah.
Let's just remove it completely.
Unfortunately, it's about $40,000.
I would be so happy to make $40,000. But my point is that like, or not point, but it's more so. Wow, how intoxicating is power to her and people in general.
I've come full circle on a lot of these things where now I'm like, I didn't believe in term limits for the Senate. Now I definitely do.
Oh, absolutely.
I definitely believe in 18-year terms for the Supreme Court.
Oh,
and actually for all federal judgeships, I
Yeah.
think, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I definitely think like power needs it.
Yeah.
It obviously corrupts.
Yeah.
And everybody needs to go.
When it comes to human nature, we should assume the worst in government. Not,
yeah.
especially in terms of power. Like, there needs to be very strict, and it should almost cost you to be a politician, not reward you.
The other thing
And
is,
I think that's just one example of how things have gotten so out of whack. Is that becoming a politician, your children become famous. John McCain's daughter is a television personality.
yeah.
What the fuck did she ever do? Nothing.
She put up with
By the
that
way, everybody,
asshole.
GoFundMe.com/Meghan McCain. Donate what you can. we need to make sure she's okay. Go ahead. So we're sponsored by Meghan McCain's GoFundMe.
I assume Meghan McCain has several houses she doesn't even know about.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, she finds weird keys and she's like, "Oh my God, we have a house in Tahoe." Ooh.
So the horse race, you were...
Mean where I puked? Yes, let's talk horse race. There's a poll recently released, a CNN poll, and I'm sorry that there's so much construction going on next door. Everybody, I'm gonna head over there and let them know that they're ruining the winners and losers show. No, I'm joking. So CNN just did this poll about Democratic front runners.
Sure.
So this is how the numbers shake out for like the top 5. So Vice President Joe. Oh, sorry. Let me just start over. At the top, 33%, Joe Biden, former VP Joe Biden. Coming in second was Bernie Sanders at 13%. Now, this is all very preliminary, obviously. There's a long way to go. These numbers are going to change substantially. Number 3 is Kamala Harris at 9%. Number 4 is Elizabeth Warren at 8%. Number 5 is Cory Booker at 5%, tied with John Kerry.
Jesus.
Essentially, this is a list of which names do you recognize. I mean, that's a lot of what these early polls are. Just a couple of standouts at the bottom. I just want to point out Beto O'Rourke, who's Texas congressman running for senator, at 4%. I think he's got some upward potential. Eric Holder's running. You know that.
Is he running?
Yeah, he said he's running. What a joke! It's like again, how intoxicating is power that this fucking guy thinks he belongs in here.
I think if I was Eric Holder, I could see believing I should run. I could see that.
Agreed, but I'm saying
because it's what we are in desperate need of is an institutionalist, and there is no more institutionalist than Eric Holder.
Right. He was the Attorney General under Obama.
He's the Attorney General under Obama. He's a small C conservative. He's somebody who believes in process. He's somebody who believes in the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
He's somebody who believes in the basic big D Democrat issues of like normal regulatory state that actually does its fucking job.
Right.
You know, like
I heard him in an interview, and I got the sense that he thinks he's like the reasonable guy. He's like the King Arthur's court. Like, I'm the reasonable knight.
But I think what Eric Holder is failing to see, I see why he thinks
that
this.
He has no chance of winning.
Well, he has no chance of winning, too, but also what he fails to understand is that we're all the reasonable guy right now.
Right. True.
Everybody who actually believes in the rule of law is more reasonable than the other 30% of the country.
Yeah.
So
I'd vote for Melania over Trump. She's the reasonable guy.
She threw her hat in with Trump.
I'm not suggesting anything good about her. I'm saying compared to him.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. Like somebody who has a good, healthy fear of history, the law, government, anybody will do at this point.
Of course.
Yeah, and
the cup of diarrhea I have sitting on my kitchen counter would do over Trump.
My dog, who's afraid of everything, I'd rather her be president.
The sound of the saw is over there.
Yeah.
Totally.
Honestly, a can of Coke.
Yeah. Although I don't think that's a saw. What does that sound like to you?
The best vibrator in the world.
Somebody's gotten that diesel out today.
I got a 3-stroke vibrator.
Whew, had a rough weekend. Got to whip out the Tuesday diesel vibrator. Got to get that right mix of oil. It just started an old boat. This fucking sucks. Eric Holder's 3%. Michael Avenatti 1%. This guy's just toying around. I'm okay with his presence. I actually don't think that his participation in all this crazy story has been terrible.
I think Avenatti is the right person for the right moment.
Yeah, he brought up.
If this moment goes away, he should go away.
He should go away too. Yeah, exactly. Well said. I cannot add to that. Kirsten Gillibrand. Kirsten. Oh wow, look at you.
She actually, I would vote
Amy
for her.
Klobuchar. I think Gillibrand has some over Klobuchar. Just not that I have any specifics about either of them, but I think Gillibrand has a higher ceiling at least. I mean, she might surprise, but I doubt she can overcome the top.
But
people.
Here's the thing. So I am older than you.
Oh come on! Stop.
And I have been
Don't
paying
insult
attention
yourself.
to politics for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Maybe even longer than me.
What things look like a year from now will be completely different.
Right.
I mean, completely different. So there are people who are in the woodwork right now you don't know about, whose profile will be huge a year from now. There are people who will just fall away. It is entirely possible that there are people who are running just for the sake of fucking with Trump. I honestly believe that at this point. And there are people who are in there just to make sure that their ideas are heard.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, you can get a lot of exposure just from this process.
There is no way
Winners and Losers is running for president.
Bernie Sanders is running for president.
There's no way?
There's just no. He's too old. He's just too old.
Biden's older than he is.
I think Biden is a red herring too.
His teeth aren't, but he is.
I wouldn't. I mean, in a primary, I wouldn't vote for
Biden. How would you explain a 33% Biden? Why does he have a 20-point lead over Sanders in this?
I think that's purely because people are just dying to get back to the halcyon days of the Obama era.
Right.
They're like they want to just get back to normalcy.
Yeah.
I think that's what that is a deep-seated desire for normalcy.
Right.
Because, you know.
And Biden is like one of those guys who your memories are probably better than the actual experience of him. Like, he's a great speech giver. He has that kind of backslappy, big smile, old school charm that is probably. Now that's a.
Okay, now that's
table saw or a circular saw.
Yeah, that's just cruel. Hold on.
Little too much manliness here, Robert.
Sorry.
When I texted you that I want you to be manly, you came through with the white T-shirt, the smoking, the disheveled hair, the lack of abs.
I will get.
But I didn't ask for the sawing neighbor.
I think, I think Biden
You
is
got great
just.
abs, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I
He's
think
skinny people with nice abs.
But let me grab a pack of cigarettes.
Okay. All right. We'll pause. All right, we're back. Robert's refreshed his stash.
I feel like we're doing porn. You know, modern porn now is like all of a sudden you'll hear like the neighbor next door, and it used to be like back in the day they actually did it in a soundstage.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, there's a
You hear the sound guy going, pause, hold on.
a second. Yeah.
Wait, plane's not. I know you guys can't hear it, but I'm wearing headphones. I'm the sound guy. 3 more seconds. Okay. All right. Keep fucking. Okay, go ahead.
I had a friend who was a camera guy, and he would
a porn camera guy.
He was a porn camera guy. He was a regular camera guy, but he would do porn just to make the ends meet every once in a while. And
so gay porn, you mean? The ends meet? Get it?
Yeah, nice.
No.
Well, it was funny because he pointed out like that you get really like. You just get work a day about it where you're like, oh, God, I hope it's just not an anal day because the smell.
Oh, no, the smell.
He's like, so.
Oh, boy.
God damn.
How about we just close the door for the next, 10 minutes? We'll wrap up, and then we can.
And I'll turn on.
Oh, I love this. Garage going down. Robert's got a couple lights, got some track lights going. No, this is nice. Do you think they're over there going like, God, those fucking podcaster guys are ruining our sawing?
Where they're chitty chatting.
With their little yipper yappering away. What if they were like weighing in going, Biden has financial interests because he's from Delaware. He's very creepy. Like, by the way, the thing about Biden that I think is his downfall, other than his corporate ties, because he's an old school establishment fucking guy, just because he gives a good speech doesn't mean that we should all be bamboozled into thinking he's gonna care about actual people. I'll take him over Trump. Don't get me wrong, obviously, but his creepiness. He's a gropey, grabby. There's lots of videos of him making young women feel very uncomfortable.
I honestly,
they're not easy to find. They're not hard to find. And again, in this era, in this world, we do not need another fucking grabby, entitled, white, rich fucker doing that stuff.
I agree.
And he's a likable rich fucker. But
Biden would not be a first choice of mine.
Yeah, he'd win. I think he'd beat Trump. Do you think he would? I don't know. Maybe
I honestly don't know. I mean, the thing about this election coming up and the future elections is the Electoral College is a huge issue.
Yeah.
Gerrymandering is a huge issue. And the reality of it is that at any given moment, even in a national election, what you're really playing with is 5% of the country, 5% of the electorate in terms of what they're going to do. Because they're, 40% of the country is going to be is going to vote Democrat, 40% is going to vote Republican, and then by the time you get up to the last stages, that number will be down to about 5% of actual people in play. So
would you call those the independents? Is that the simplistic way of saying that?
I don't know what their deal is.
Yeah,
I have come to the conclusion that if you are walking into a voting booth not sure what's going to happen, what the fuck have you been doing for the last several just days, let alone the last 5 years? How did you not know what the fuck you wanted?
Yes. How can you be that disconnected from any sense of what you think the government should be like? I think it's I don't know what the independent mind person thing is. I mean, I don't understand the Republican mind, but I also don't understand, I actually, you know what, independence, I get it. You're taking your kid to school, you're trying to, pay your mortgage, and you just don't have time for politics to be the thing that you pay attention to or as your entertainment. Okay, I get that. Well,
okay. I wish.
Couple angles on that. There's one of the systems of oppression in this country is we're busy. We work too much. Our capitalism requires it. Our country requires it. Our jobs require it. The employment rate is one of the reasons it's partially low, other than the fact that they define it in a way that makes it low because they don't count people who've given up on looking for work, and there's all kinds of ways that they finagle that definition to fit the narrative. But another part of it is that people work multiple jobs. People are tired. Americans don't get vacation. Americans don't get paternity leave. They don't get maternity leave. They don't get all kinds of stressful.
And by the way, it's our God-given right. One of the reasons why we have a democracy is so you don't have to do that shit. It is part of we are a free country. You don't have to be engaged if you don't want
Sure.
it.
True. I would suggest in an ideal context, that's definitely there's a version of that we're existing right now that is that speaks to.
That's really perverse. Yeah.
I don't fault people for being uninformed. I'm saying because especially if they're uninformed because they're just so busy living their lives, and that's a type of privilege. I don't think I would hold it against somebody for that.
I think it's harder to be misinformed when people are like, the only place I get news from is Fox and InfoWars. It's like, well, you actively had to do that.
Yeah. Well, there's high information voters, low information voters, and misinformation voters. And there's a lot of misinformation voters out there.
30% of the country is misinformation
deeply
voters.
Misinformed. And the other Democratic side of that, not that we're all informed either, but at least there's some grounding in reality because we still stake out our own little territories and bubbles and biases and all that stuff too. But I don't remember where I was going.
Subscribe to the failing New York Times, please. By all means.
Yeah, subscribe. I don't know. The Sanders-Warren thing is another factor. I don't know. I mean, like you said, in a year from now, there's probably going to be massive changes and maybe some people we haven't heard of. So you think definitely it won't be Booker, Warren, Harris, or Sanders or Biden? Because those are the top five.
I think.
Or John Kerry, maybe.
I think, unfortunately, I think Sanders is too old. I think Biden is too old. I think Biden would be a fairly typical Democratic person. I mean, the reality is that where other parliamentary systems, basically you have to form a coalition government, and that's more or less what we do. We just do it in a different way. But the result is the same, is that you do end up with a president who's supposed to be kind of mediocre. You're supposed to. That's
in our system.
Yeah, that's the way it's designed. You're supposed to, who appeals to enough people or is lukewarm on some other issues.
Mm-hmm.
So Biden would be a fairly standard person. I think I would vote for any of those people. My person of choice actually would actually be somebody like Klobuchar or Gillibrand. But I'm a big fan of Elizabeth Warren. I don't think she will be electable.
Really?
I think that the country is too sexist still. I think that she comes across to... one of the major things that drove Trump was the owning the libs kind of ethos.
Yeah. Which will be the next amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah.
We must own the libs.
What must own the libs?
As long as they're upset, something's going right.
And I think that Elizabeth Warren is the apotheosis of the libs that people want to own.
Thanks for assuming I would know what that means.
I barely do too.
Okay.
I might actually be getting that wrong. I think, apotheosis might be anti. I don't know. But she's the embodiment.
Yeah. She's the apothecary of it all.
She's the apothecary of people that we want to own.
Yeah.
That
she's the halitosis of it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And like my mother-in-law, who even under Trump has become very liberal. She wasn't before, but she looks at Elizabeth Warren and it drives her fucking bonkers. She still finds Elizabeth Warren so aesthetically displeasing.
Aesthetically, or
that's the thing, is that a lot of people.
Do you mean like literally aesthetically, or just some sort of intuitive sense?
Her entire sort of shrill intellectual school marmish vibe.
Okay.
Drives her up a wall. She hates it, and
she's kind of designed to be a generic Lego character. She's like an '80s Lego piece.
I agree.
She wears the same blue jacket all the time, maybe occasionally purple when she wants to mix it up.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
but
that '80s like the spaceman.
Yeah,
that's Elizabeth Warren, politician.
That'd be so cool if she started wearing a helmet just everywhere, and a backpack.
She's gonna need one with all of Trump's goons trying to get her cheek swabs.
I love Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren's somebody I would happily vote into office, but I think that people have, Democrats in particular, have vastly underestimated or misunderstood the power of aesthetics in national voting. Trump does not get in if people don't look at him and go, "That's what a man is." That's how he secures a big part of his base. And when you're playing with 5%, 10% of the country, and
Go ahead.
that is going to make a difference.
Yeah. Oh, to that. Yes. Okay. Okay. I'm following now.
I just think
you're maintaining the context of the 5 or 10% are really the only people who matter, because I'm going to vote for. Although enthusiasm is a big thing, I think too. Like if they getting your base out / non-voters. I mean, the biggest group of people that need to be reached are non-voters, not.
No, I disagree.
Not Republican middle.
Well, coming into this,
by sheer numbers,
into the midterms, the biggest issue right now is getting people who would vote Democrat to vote. There are plenty of people who are Democrats or liberals who just don't vote.
Right.
And if they can be mobilized, then
that's what I'm talking about.
We can make all the difference.
Yeah.
Swing voters are they're unreachable as far as because.
That's what I was saying about them earlier, by the way. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know how to reach a swing voter, but I think the reality is that right now it's just get people who believe these things to go and fucking vote.
Right.
And logically we are a 50-50 country. There's that should be, it should swing maybe 10%, 5 to 10% Democrat. Yeah. If polling is correct. And so we should have 60% of the representation at any given moment. I mean, 55 to 60. At least,
especially if we didn't have all the cheating with gerrymandering and vote suppression and all that stuff, which is just like criminal. It's amazing that stuff is so common.
But
we just assume it's going to be okay. It's going to happen.
There are two sides to that. There's one, again, Republicans turn out for midterms, and Republicans pay attention to local elections, and that's where a lot of the gerrymandering took place is at the statewide level. Mm-hmm. And then the other issue there is that there's something constitutionally wrong in the way the Senate is set up at this point, because it's so grossly disproportionate.
Yeah.
44% of the country is controlling 100% of the conversation.
Yeah.
There's no way that should be the case.
I agree. It's quite simple and obvious. And I've seen finally more about that, and that's something I want to talk about a lot more with this podcast, too, is the kind of election, the structural inhibitors to progress and what we could do to fix it, and that's one of the top ones. The Senate, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what the reform is, but it's absurd that the 7 empty Midwestern or mountain states are, 14 senators, and you get the most populous state in the country has 2, California, where each senator represents 200 or 20 million people. Or
whereas, like, there are states that have 1 congressman but 2 senators.
Yeah, 1 senator. So it's something like Wyoming. The voter in a Wyoming voter has 68 times more influence than a California voter, or something like that.
And then the thing is, I really agree with the founders' idea that the Senate is supposed to be sort of a group of wise men who are, and the House is supposed to be a lunatic asylum. Like, it really is supposed to be like people fucking duking it out. And the Senate is supposed to be a group of wise men who just kind of go, wait a second, let's look at the bigger picture. Let's not look at like how this tiny constituency views the world. Let's look at it in a global way. But that's not what it's turned into. Right. What it's turned into is something just as beholden. And actually, they're not even beholden to their particular constituency. They're now all beholden to their donors.
Yes.
And that's
and to their ideology.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and they're not beholden to their ideology. They're selected into those jobs because of their ideology.
Fair enough.
I mean, these...
Well, they're advancing their donors' ideology.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of these guys don't have ideology.
This is true.
They
have in-group a need to feel like they belong, and they probably sincerely believe the bullshit, but they're part of this, like, industry of politics. It shouldn't be an industry. Yeah. It's not meant to, because, I don't know.
But again, it comes back to the thing we were talking about with ballot initiatives, where, it used to be that one of the major reasons why you elected somebody was for their critical thinking abilities. And that has become exactly the opposite. Right. Like, you want if you're a Republican, you want somebody who is not going to think critically about things at all.
Right. You want Louis Gohmert.
Yeah.
Steve King from Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want these guys who have never thought outside of their 3 ideas.
Well, Trump's only thing is marketing, being in front of the camera and getting people to look at him and pay attention. It's impossible to ignore him. Like, it's impossible to ignore like a rabid Tyrannosaurus Rex or something. Like, it's like, I mean, he twitches, he moves, he's hard to not look at. He's such a freak. He's such a weirdo. His hair, he fucking combs his sideburns over his ears.
That's such a perfect example.
He should be impeached on that alone.
That's one of the things that really drives me crazy right now about this time of, like, moderate Republicans turning into the Democratic or just resigning. Is like, part of me wants to go, that's fine. I'm glad you're doing that. You need to take responsibility for the fact that you set the stage for this asshole. Yeah. You created the ground by which this guy grew, because he is the natural in every possible way. Trump is the most natural evolution of the Republican Party that there is. So what they did was they went from normal guys who just believed in sort of these conservative financial ideas, and they went further and further where all critical thinking went out the window. And now you've got somebody who not only doesn't critically think, but also doesn't have the 3 ideas Louis Gohmert has. Yeah. Like, all he has is me. If it works, if it makes me look good to the 30% of people who come to my rallies, great. Sure.
Yeah.
That's all I give a fuck about.
Like, Sarah, one of the ways to watch these people is like Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's not a policymaker, but she's a very important, she's the mouthpiece of the whole thing. And all the other policymakers, like
it's a binary thing.
Cabinet heads.
If you're in there, you're part of it. I'm sorry.
Oh, absolutely. But I'm saying like one of the frames I watched them through is that they're performing for one person. Mm-hmm. They're performing for Trump. They're keeping their job by towing the line because they know that if they don't and he catches wind of it, they'll lose their job or it'll come back to them. And in that same sense, Trump is doing that to his base. That's the only move he's got because they protect his right flank by maintaining enthusiasm. If he loses that,
I think you're assigning too much intelligence there. I'm not saying he's doing it
on purpose. I'm just saying that's his only rational in the sense of how his intuition picks up on
that's the only way, that thing that's driving him.
Yeah. Because he can't change. I mean, it's one of the reasons I'm suspicious of certainty. Because once you really lay down a specific certain line, then you eliminate the possibility that you can deviate from that.
And there's that story that keeps
somebody change their mind over time and with new information, and
there's that story that keeps coming out about his Cohen and the other financial advisors being in the room with him, going, "You can't do these things."
Yeah,
and he's like, "That's what I'm going to do." And he's like, "Where did you get these ideas? You don't understand how economics work." And he goes, "I've had these ideas for 30 years." It's like that doesn't make them good ideas. It just makes them old,
right? Because you thought of your shitty ideas in your late 40s. You fucking moron. Yeah, it's bad.
It's not good.
It's definitely bizarre and weird. And so, all right, last question. Thank you for your time. We're already at 2 hours or so.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And tomorrow's podcast will be just as good because I'm coming back every day. I'm going to live in your garage. I'll live in the rafters, though, so don't worry.
It's all good.
I have an organ. Wait, that's a Phantom of the Opera joke. It's not even a joke because I realized how stupid it sounded.
That would be strange, though, if you lived in my rafters with just like a Casio tone.
Yeah, shitty.
You're just playing and not even playing it, just playing the beats from it. That.
Hey, gotta get some D batteries. Throw up some D batteries real quick. Get them out of your Magnum flashlights. Magnums. They don't call them Magnum. Condoms have D batteries. All right, that was all. A bunch of random soupy words. Last question was. What the hell were you saying? All right. Well, I forgot the question, Robert. This is embarrassing.
That's okay.
I'll text it to you later.
Well, I will tell you my conclusion on this.
All right.
First of all, what I said earlier about nobody gets out alive, I really hope that that's true. I hope that people like Gary Cohen and Dana Perino and all, I hope they all meet bad ends.
Well, Dana Perino's already on Fox News. Is that who the spokesperson? She was George W.'s spokesperson. Yeah,
she needs to suffer horribly. Okay. All of these people who are claiming we're part of the resistance from within. Too bad. Too bad.
Yeah. Oh, you meaning never Trumpers? Or
No. People who are in the administration right now, but are acting like they're the reasonable people in the room.
Right.
They all got to go.
Yeah.
They all got to suffer, and we all got to make sure that they never get to sit on a corporate board again.
Let's hope. Or in a restaurant again. Honestly, I'm totally for people yelling at others.
I am 100% for that.
We don't have any other way to influence these people.
And I'm a tremendously polite person who believes that people should have their own private lives and everything. This is one instance where I'm like, no, we're done.
You run concentration camps. You deserve to be yelled at the least. You should be in fucking jail.
Yeah.
Do you think that'll ever happen?
No, I don't think there'll be any consequences for the majority of these people. No. I think that
at worst, they'll end up in the right-wing sphere writing books like Newt Gingrich does and just, ripping off the Republican base just like Newt. I mean, there's a cushy landing for all of them.
For almost all of them.
Yeah.
I think that the Trump kids should never be allowed in a cocktail party in New York ever again without being spit on. Mm-hmm. I actually think we need to pass a law that makes it legal to spit on Trump children.
I agree.
I honestly think part of me is you did it to yourself. We all told you don't do this.
Yeah.
We could not have been more clear. Don't do this. So that's one thing that I think we need to be very clear on. That.
So it'll be up to the Democrats. I'm not referring to the midterm. If the blue wave hits the way we hope,
yeah,
I'm hoping for Senate and House. It's probably just going to be the House. Let's hope.
Let's hope it's
My
the
God,
House.
if it's neither, it's going to be pretty devastating. But if it's the House, and of course, then we have to worry about who's in charge. Pelosi will probably still maintain leadership, and I think that's a mistake.
People shit on Pelosi. Pelosi is the same sort of person as the president, where it's like, yeah, she's not somebody I would love, but the thing is, it's a political position. It's not, and she's politically very savvy lady.
Well, she gets a lot of credit for being a good fundraiser. I know that's one of their primary top 2 traits. She's great at raising money.
But
that's exactly why she doesn't deserve the power, because she's thrived in a corrupt system. And I know what you're saying, at least allow me to get it wrong here and you can correct me, is that she's got skills that operate within the system we have. So those aren't skills we should abandon. Is that fair?
I think that's about right.
Yeah.
The reason why Pelosi gets, the reality is it's an aesthetic thing. It's a woman who
that's
has
not my objection to her.
Who has, but this is why the Republicans were able to paint her that way, is because it's a woman who has sort of a shrill voice, and that's why Republicans have painted her that way and been able to get away with it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of Democrats have been afraid to push back on that and not say, like, Pelosi's fine. There are many worse people to have leading the House.
I was reading an article this morning that her number 2 is Steny Hoyer, who is the likely to resume. He'd be the most likely to take her position if she isn't the House leader. But it's kind of it's like an election thing, right? Like they do election among the members of the House.
Right.
And so they start to position for it. There's always that little bit of a flurry of activity, like, oh, Dick Durbin's going for the. Oh, he's a senator. He's not House, but those types.
Right.
You hear about it, and then they pick one, and then they move on. And so it'll be a big news story when it goes down.
The reality is that I don't think Americans have any sense of how important Speaker of the House is. It's third in line to the president. If we were a parliamentary system, it would be the president.
Right.
It would be the most important person in the government.
Yeah.
And it's actually sort of supposed to be.
Yeah. And so now we've got into that smooth brain fucking Paul Ryan. This dumb, dead-eyed moron who thinks Ayn Rand is a good writer.
Who even the most reasonable of Republicans who were in the House at that time said, we chose him because we had no choice. We had nobody better.
Right.
We had nobody who wasn't so horrifically polarizing or stupid or ineffective that we could get them in here.
The only person enjoying the Trump presidency is John Boehner.
Oh, John Boehner.
The guy who made the right decision. He jumped out of the... You know what it was? It's like he's that guy in the hot air balloon who jumps out when it's 5 feet off the ground. As if that's a common thing. But like, if you're going to jump out of a hot air balloon, do it when it's like 5 feet. That's about the maximum.
He got off the Titanic just before it left port. There's no question about that.
He looked. He was standing on the deck of the Titanic, and it started to move from the dock.
Yeah.
He went,
no, I don't have a good feeling about
smoke
this.
some cigarettes and start up a weed business. He's making money off weed, which is a fucking hypocrite.
And here's the other thing that I think John Boehner should be taken out and shot, is because he's another one where it's like, dude, you were there. You saw exactly what's going on. You know this is wrong, and you're not saying a goddamn thing.
Right.
And I'm sorry. You chose to be a leader in this country. You chose to have people listen to you for wisdom, and you are not dispensing it when it's the appropriate time.
Well,
so go fuck yourself.
Well, yes, I agree with the go fuck yourself. That's why we should codify the lives that politicians lead after they're done controlling other people's lives.
I agree.
But
logically, just as a matter of humanity, don't you think these people should stop and realize, like, I have a responsibility that I sought out as a leader. It is my responsibility to give leadership, and they're not. That bothers me immensely.
It should bother you. I agree. Because you're coming from a place of decency and considerate humanity and whatever. They don't. Not they. That's too broad.
No,
he doesn't.
It's not broad
because the interests of regular people are against their interests. John Boehner did a good job defending the white male patriarchy that he was a representative of during his time, and he's being rewarded for it in his post-political career because that's how it works for all these guys.
I agree.
He
you're right.
His goals.
There's no personal incentive for them to do their job appropriately.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. But I mean, what I still don't understand about that is like, then why did you take the fucking job? Why did you run for it?
Because he and his friends made a lot of money and had a lot of power and a lot of access and
There are better ways.
Status is the word I was going for. Not
There are better
access.
ways to make money. There are better ways to make money. There are better ways to achieve status.
Like podcasting.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
podcasting.
exactly. Like
There's
big podcasting.
big
One thing-
podcasting, open mics,
Oh,
bringer shows. She could put together a Herald group.
oh yeah.
Man,
Let's come up with a Herald name. What do you want to name it? Let's call it.
the Crazy Toilets.
Ooh, I like it. I was gonna go with End Grain. I don't know why that. It's because we're in a woodworking shop here. I really do love your shop. I really want to move in here. I've done my work on a little patio that's like the size of this table. Literally, it's about 2.5, 3.5 feet wide. And yeah, so
having.
could I actually come over
Yes.
if I had a project I needed to do?
You can.
If I needed some space.
But you have to pay me $1,000.
I'll do it.
No, you can
I would-
anytime you want.
I'd be honored.
That is.
And I'd be clean, and I would
I make
respect your space, obviously.
maybe 2 pieces of furniture a year,
Oh man.
and it's nice to have a shop because something goes wrong, I
Yeah.
can. Like, I have a plumbing issue, and I know, like, I have enough tools in here. I have to go to the hardware store and get a
Yeah.
few things, but I can always handle an issue.
Yeah.
For the most part.
With confidence tools and YouTube, you can fix anything.
For the most part.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really nice thing. I think that I underuse my tools, but I think anybody who has ever tackled a project immediately is like, I need better tools.
Oh yeah.
You just immediately
and among that tool is a shop, like the space, to kind of spread out.
this bench,
Yeah.
you start to realize, like, oh, the table is a tool.
Yes.
I need my table
Yeah.
to be good. Like,
Yeah.
you start to realize, like,
Yeah, you need a place for your empty Coke cans. You need a place for your lighter. You need a place for your phone and your
Sure.
book of stuff. Your bag of mail.
sure.
Your bag of mail from the government.
That's the thing about people who own tools or do this kind of work is you end up building more for your shop
Right.
than anything else. I've done.
Did you make these drawers? Like
Yeah.
everything you built this whole thing up?
Yeah.
Looks great.
But I certainly have made more furniture
Yeah.
for this room than any other room
Of course.
in my house.
Yeah, and you feel good. It probably felt great.
I come in
Yeah.
here and just jack off.
I've already started.
It's
It's the benefit of having fat thighs. I've seen a lot of parallel lines. It looks great. You got those nice finish on that
I may have
edge of the
even used a
counter there.
laser level on that. I'm not gonna lie. I did all right.
I'm into it. I love it. So, all right. Well, Robert, it's been 2 hours.
It's
The
been a
best
pleasure.
2 hours of my life. People can find you on Twitter. Is that
You can always find me at Twitter, Team Yasumura.
He will not follow you back, guys. I've been trying for years. I have
Don't I
favorite.
follow you?
No,
No, I do.
I don't. No, Trust
I do
me.
follow
I
you.
checked this morning when I was masturbating.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't know. Maybe you do. I don't think you do though.
I do.
You
You don't tweet a lot.
I do or don't?
You do not.
Oh, really? I have 35,000 tweets. Not bragging or anything, but
I haven't done that.
It's way too much. It's embarrassing.
But I follow like 300 people.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
my feed is.
that's fairly low, believe it or not, depending on how you. I guess everything's relative, but yeah. I think you don't. I think you think I don't tweet a lot because you don't follow me.
I must.
It's okay. By the way, I hate this. What I'm doing to you, right? I'm sorry.
okay.
That whole notion of like, oh, follow, do you follow? But I think about it. I that's one of the things I kind of want to escape LA from. I don't know if I don't think you take that with you when you leave LA. So it's not like that's what's LA's a problem. But those sorts of like my long term plan, as I've told Robert earlier, and I want to move out of LA. Unless things turn around for me here and I have a compelled to stay, but I kind of would rather live near trees and less. If I'm going to be depressed, I'd rather be depressed near a lake.
I'd like to be someplace where they can't get an ambulance to me fast enough. That's the way I. So
Yeah.
if they ever find me OD'd,
Right.
it's like you can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't get me to the clinic fast.
When I choke to death on a pork rind, I want them to find that pork rind in my throat after my body's decomposed after about 3 or 4 weeks after the mailman said,
Sure.
I think he's not there.
And I want the local incompetent sheriff to not really know what's going on.
Yeah.
When he's like, maybe this was a murder. It's probably Puerto Rican guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the way I want that to go down.
Look at him, dark hair.
Oof.
Oof, must be Puerto Rican.
This guy was a millionaire. He had like $10,000 in the bank. Like I said, a millionaire. Killed for his money.
Doctor swimming through a vault of pennies every morning.
I want to be screwing the local waitress named Madge.
Who doesn't?
That's
the
how,
whole point,
and
yeah.
not feel good about it either.
Right.
Like this is just something we both need to get done.
Is that your coffee breath or mine? It doesn't matter.
We don't normally face each other during coitus? Just turn around.
Just tip the bush.
Turn around, Madge, and start the bun.
Ugh, you clean the smoke off the mirror again? Fuck. I meant to say smoke. You ever clean a smoke off glass? It's disgusting.
I have. It is.
Yeah,
I'm a smoker. I've cleaned smoke off a lot.
When I was cleaning aquariums, I had a gentleman call me from the phone book, and he needed his aquarium cleaned. He'd been smoking in his apartment for 40 years or something, and the aquarium was covered in a layer of yellow, brown tar, whatever the fuck that is. It had been marinating in smoke and I had to it was a hexagon too, so I had to wipe every fucking pane of it. And he sat there in shorts staring at me with like a shirt that was open his fat
with a
belly.
cigarette hanging out of his mouth.
Yeah, he was a real creep. He's like exactly what I'm afraid I'll turn into someday. And I just started a new aquarium at home.
So wait, isn't
probably
glass? I mean, glass is non-porous. I mean, isn't?
Well, it's worse than the wallpaper. It took me forever to clean his walls.
Oh, you had to.
No, I didn't. That's absurd. But exactly. That's my
like
point.
It's supposed to be relatively easy to clean.
Yeah.
And yet it was a nightmare.
It leaves a film on everything.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Well,
yeah.
and tar has it. I mean, it's called tar for a reason. It sticks.
Mm-hmm. That's why it's called being tardy. Did you know that?
I did not know
I just made that up. I have no idea if it's true. Probably not.
Okay.
I assume it's not. Well, thanks, Robert. It's been wonderful. I've appreciated the human interaction.
As have I.
I'd like to hug you when we're done.
Maybe you should change the podcast to Two Lonely People.
Two lonely guys. You lonely? You lonely these days?
Almost always.
Yeah. You know, there's been research showing that loneliness is much of an indicator of poor health. In fact, more than obesity,
chicken and egg,
than smoking.
Chicken and egg, my friend.
What do you mean?
That
chicken to be less lonely?
That loneliness leads to poor health as much as poor health leads to loneliness.
Oh no, they're probably related if that's what you're saying. But the factor of lonely, if you're lonely, it's worse than if you're fat, as far as its overall effect.
I did read that.
Yeah,
actually.
So I'm all.
But that's from the same people who said chocolate can cure cancer. So I'm gonna not believe
it can
that.
cure cancer if you choke on it.
You can cure cancer if you take a.
I really do think I'm going to die from choking. That's not my plan. I just assume I will because I tend to roll my head back when I go, oh, it's so good.
Anybody who spends
beef.
a lot of time alone and is over 40 or over 35, you start to go, oh, there are any number of ways this can go horribly wrong.
Right.
I was bending down to to just dry my ankle out of the shower, and I came within a centimeter of just clocking myself on the kitchen sink. I mean, on the bathroom sink. Yeah, and I was like, oh, this could be the way I go.
Yeah.
This could easily be the way I go. It's just some dumb accident at home.
Yeah, some bend over and you didn't realize your head was going to hit the sink and then you're done.
And then I do woodworking, so I'm actually convinced if I make it to 65 with all 10 digits, I'm going to be fucking impressed with myself.
When I was a kid, and then we'll end this, my mom knew this guy. He was a woodworker, furniture repairing guy. Yeah. He cut off all 4 of his fingers. He was a pro.
In one go?
One go. He really fucked up. I don't know if he was. I mean, how does that happen? I mean, I'm not. But accidents happen. I mean, woodworking is dangerous. I mean,
it's dangerous. You can't see it now, but sure. I had kickback the other day, and
That's where the saw spits the board at you.
The table saw grabbed the board I was running, and it was just a dumb lapse of thought. Yeah. Kicked back. I came damn close to breaking my arm.
Wow. Hit you in the upper arm there?
Hit me in the upper arm. This was black.
Is that what that little cut is?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the last vestige of it.
Sure.
You can see there's a very slight scar here.
Man, yeah.
This was black.
Ouch.
And I can't tell you, I recently ran a chisel into my thumb. I still don't know how that happened. So.
Well, this doesn't take much. There's only a few ways you can chisel correctly. There's millions of ways to fuck it up.
One of the ways you don't chisel correctly is by putting a hand in front of where the chisel blade is.
That's right.
It turns out.
Good advice. Okay. Let's end on that. That's
Okay.
great. Thank you, Robert.
Thank
you,
you.
Hank.
Thank you, Hank.
listeners. Thank you, sawing guys next door. Thank you, Robert's dog, for eventually deciding that I'm okay to be around. She went and laid down. She was staring at me for the first 20 minutes. I'm used to it. Goodbye, everybody. winnersandlosersshow.com. I'm updating the website. And go on to YouTube. Subscribe. Once we reach 100 subscribers, we get to name the channel, which will be great. I'm going to name it Robert Yasumura. Needs help drying his ankles. That'll be my show. And but anyway, thank you, everybody. Thanks for listening. Robert, I love you.
Ciao.
Say it back. Say it back.
I love you.
Yes.